order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, the Governor's March 15, 2020 order imposing strict limitations on the number of people that may gather in one place, this meeting of the Town of Chelmsford Board of Selectmen will be conducted via remote participation to the greatest extent possible. Specific information and the general guidelines for remote participation by members of the public and or parties with the right and or requirement to attend this meeting can be found on the town's website at www.chelmsfordma.gov. For this meeting, members of the public who wish to watch the meeting may do so by accessing the Chelmsford Telemedia website at www.chelmsfordtv.org. No in-person attendance or members of the public will be permitted, but every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access the proceedings in real time via technological means. In the event that we are unable to do so, despite best efforts, we will post on the town's website an audio or video recording transcript or other comprehensive record of proceedings as soon as possible after the meeting. That's the first note. The second thing I'd like to note to everybody is this is a virtual selectmen's meeting. You all are being muted as it begins. In the center of your screen at the bottom, you'll see a chat button when you hover over it. Everybody, if you when you log in, if you could identify yourself to one of the hosts with your name and address so that we can put that up on your screen so we know who you are. And please note that anything you type in that chat box or privately to other members in this room is being recorded. If you are unmuted and you're watching this at home, we would then ask that you mute what other devices in the background so that we do not get echoes or any type of feedback through the system. As we go, if you so to speak, if you want to address the board or anybody else who's presented, we just ask that you let the moderators know on the right in that chat screen when it opens, and you can put your question in there, and then we'll call on you and get through, and we can turn on microphones if you need to address the meeting. I will make that notice further as we go through the meeting, just to keep reminding people that that is a active recorded chat screen, and that private chats are also recorded. All right. And with that, we'll start the meeting here. We're going to start off with public service announcements, and we'll have the town clerk, Trish Surgis, talk to us about the annual election. Can we have Trish unmuted?
Good evening. Thank you for having me this evening. I'm here tonight to give an update on our local election, which, as many people know, was postponed until June 2nd because of COVID-19. We had a code red notification go out, Chief Spinney, last Wednesday, which was 20 days before the election, notifying everybody that the Board of Registrars had voted on April 24th to enact the emergency contingency plan, which that simply means that given the circumstances, we have very few election workers, and we're really trying to encourage everybody to vote by mail for this election. It's just the safer thing to do than to try to get a lot of people in one place. We had to consolidate the polling location because of how few election workers there are that are willing and able to participate. It's also an easier way for us to kind of contain everything and make sure that we have the proper safety precautions in place. So if you will indulge me, if I could read what the code red notification was, and then if anybody has any questions about it, I'll be more than happy to address that. Chief Spinney called out on May 13th at 5 p.m. approximately. This code red call is to notify all registered voters in the town of Chelmsford of important changes put in place for our local election due to COVID-19. The local election has been rescheduled to Tuesday, June 2nd. The last day to register to vote for this election is May 22nd. The town clerk urges voters to consider voting by mail for this election. In order to receive a ballot by mail, please send a signed written request either via email to townclerk@chelmsfordma.gov or mail the signed request to the town clerk at 50 Billrica Road, 01824. Applications are also available on the town website and the Secretary of State's website. All voters wishing to vote in person on June 2nd will be voting in the gym at the town offices at 50 Billerica Road. Do not go to your normal polling location on that day. All in-person voters should wear a face covering and bring a black pen. All in-person voters should park in the back of the town office building for easier access to the gym. Only 4 voters per precinct will be allowed in the gym at one time, and voters will queue up by precinct outside. Other safety measures will be in place, such as hand sanitizing and frequent disinfecting of voting booths and tabulators. Please call the town clerk's office at 978-250-5205 with questions. Thank you for participating in your local government and your patience as we execute this election during these trying times. Stay safe and be well. Okay, you're very welcome. Are there any questions specifically about the code red? I know there was some confusion about how you sign an email, and I just wanted to clarify for the public that you don't have to email your request. It does have to be signed. You can either jot something on a piece of paper, sign it, and take a picture of it in email. You can scan a note and email it. You can download the application, fill it out, and do the same thing. Or you can just fill out the application or jot your note down and drop it in the mail. But the email isn't required. Were there any other questions that anybody heard that was confusing? Everybody good? All right, and again, if anybody does have any specific questions, they can call the town clerk's office.
Virginia, hold on 1 second. Go ahead.
Thank you.
Sorry,
So, Trish, the only question I had was like, will we be putting like something on the senior center sign or anywhere else in town that just says, you know, voting June 2nd, mail in or town gym or something, or see website? Because you had a very thorough explanation on the town website too.
Mm-hmm.
Or are we, you know, will anything be in the paper for people that might not get the communications the way they come out so far?
A press release did go out, and I know the Patch did something and the Independent did something, I believe. At least she talked to me about it. Also, I thought the signboard idea was a very good idea. Usually I use the signboards closer to the election to direct people where to go, but right now is a perfect time to use it at the senior center. I'm not sure if I can get anybody at McCarthy to put it up, but I think that your message suggestion was a great idea, just to put the date there and then to again remind people to mail in ballot requests.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I think that's great. Also, just so that you know, on May 27th is when the Vote Tuesday signs, they go out always the Wednesday right before the election, as that gives that very immediate window for people to pay attention. So the additional signing that we had ordered and the additional banners are all going to go up on May 27th as well.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Was there any, so far, just so that you know, we've received 886 mailed ballots to date. So we're at 3.3% voter turnout if they all return them. We've had almost half of those requests come in since the code red went out on Wednesday. And we do have as you mentioned, the news flash out on the website. So if anybody has any other suggestions for publicity, I'm all ears. I think it's a great thing that people are responding to the mailed ballot requests. Any other questions?
No, I don't see any. And so Trish, maybe you jump right into the census.
You got it. Okay, great. So the poor U.S. Census has taken a little bit of a back burner recently, but we did get a lot of momentum early on in the program. But right when we're launching some of our more creative ideas is when everything shut down. So, for example, we had all these wonderful little, bookmarks that say, "Count me in Chelmsford." So we gave them to the library. So after everything's all done, we'll have these for people. Just as a reminder, we also did benefit from, we had done a wrap on some candy bars, and we did "Count me in Chelmsford." And then when you open it up, it has this "Learn More," and there's all kinds of details about the census inside. So we had put these in all of the school lunches, and we also gave them to the food pantry out back. So we coordinated that with the Mary, who does that Table of Plenty, and also coordinates the school lunches. So far, as of today, the country is at 59.6 response rate. The state of Mass is at a 61.7 response rate. And we are at 78.5%. So woohoo, Chelmsford. The only local towns closest to us that are beating us by just a smidge are Westford is at 78. Oh no, we're beating Westford. Sorry, Westford, 78.2. So we're at 78.5. Carlisle's at 79.8 and Littleton's at 79.6. So again, we're close. So get this little competition going. But all the other towns near us, Billerica, Burlington, Concord, Groton, Harvard, Tingsboro, they're all just a little bit below us. But I think we're right on track to have a good response. The areas that are weakest for us are the same ones that have been weak for us even since 2010, and that's that Route 110 area. Everybody around there is doing fantastic. So we're in the 80s in the areas around 110, in the low 70s in the 110 area, and then we're again in the 70% response rate up in North Chelmsford as well at this point. So I want to say thank you very much to Paul Favreau at Red Mill Graphics, who did our design for us. They did that kind of just out of being good town folk. So I think we had 33,802 residents in 2010. It has not gone up really at all since then. And again, our big boom was back in the 60s and 70s, and our population has pretty much stayed the same. So I'm going to encourage anybody who has not filled out their census yet, responded to the census online, that there's still time. There's always time, because I think that the federal government's probably going to have a hard time knocking on people's doors right now. So go Chelmsford. Let's get up over that 80% we did in 2010, and I think we're in good shape.
Okay. Trish, can I ask you how you got the candy bar idea?
I don't know. I just thought I don't even know how I got the candy bar idea. We were talking about underserved people, the underserved areas, and how to best reach them. So we were talking about Table of Plenty specifically and the food pantry, that we wanted to give them information, but we wanted to also give them something that would be useful, interesting, and enjoyable for them. So we were going to volunteer at the Table of Plenty and give these out when we volunteered, but instead they ended up going into the food bags. And I think all the people at the food pantry really appreciated them too. So.
Oh, very creative. Good job.
Well, thank you very much. It was a joint effort with our census count committee.
Well, good job to them. Tell them good thank you.
Thank you, I will.
All right. So with that, Pat, do you have a Memorial Day proclamation for us?
I do. The Town of Chelmsford Proclamation in recognition of Memorial Day, May 25th, 2020. Whereas Memorial Day, May 25th, 2020, has been set aside as the annual day of remembrance for those men and women who served our nation during times of conflict as members of the armed forces, and whereas we pause this day to especially remember those who made the ultimate sacrifice of their lives to defend the freedom of all Americans, and whereas we honor the service and sacrifice of all veterans of all wars and conflicts, and join the living veterans of the town of Chelmsford in expressing our gratitude to their fallen comrades. Now, therefore, we, the Chelmsford Board of Selectmen, do hereby proclaim Monday, May 25th, 2020, as Memorial Day 2020, and join all residents of the town in recognizing the deceased veterans of Chelmsford on this solemn day, and signed by the Board of Selectmen, sealed by the town clerk.
Okay, thank you. And then we have...
I thought, is Regina here? I thought Regina was going to be here to speak a little.
Regina's here. Hold on a second. Let me get some people. All right, we have Regina. Virginia, did you have a question?
No, it's just somebody keeps muting me and I can't control it. I was going to say the same thing, Pat, that Regina was here.
Yep.
Hi, good evening. I just want to give some information about our Chelmsford Memorial Day observance. We're going to pre-record the observance, and we will play it, Chelmsford Telemedia will be playing it on Monday, Memorial Day, and then also we'll get it up on the town website. It's a scaled down, very appropriate Memorial Day observance. This year, the Merrimack Valley Vietnam Veterans, along with American Legion Post 212, are the host organizations for the parade that obviously we're not having, but we are having the observance. And I just wanted to let everyone know that the flags at the 6 public cemeteries are all up, or if they're not up, is the last one to be done is Fairview, but that should be done by tomorrow or the next day. And then also the monuments, all the monuments in towns will have flags and wreaths. And if anybody has any questions about the flags or the cemeteries, just feel free to call me at 978-250-5238. Thank you.
Thank you, Regina. And so, let's see, with that, do we have an announcement about the 4th of July and the July 3rd Country Fair? Matt, do you have that?
I can do it. So a couple of weeks ago, the parade committee met and had a long discussion about possibly going forward with the parade on the 4th of July and if it could happen, how it could happen, and basically decided it was in the best interest of everyone to cancel the 4th of July parade this year. One thing that was noted was that so many other communities in the area had already canceled their events for that day. So even if we decided to go forward with a scaled down version, it would attract so many other residents from around the area and would just make matters even worse. So it was sadly decided to cancel that event. The parade committee did want this board to affirm that they felt that was the right decision that they made. I mean, as it turns out, as you know, the 4th of July race has also been canceled, as well as the country fair that is usually held on July 3rd and 4th.
I mean, I would send a message to them because of the amount of planning, money spent, and timing that it takes to get this done. That, to me, it sounds like a wise decision. To have to call that off last minute, I think would be a very expensive endeavor and make more of a mess. And judging by what came out today from the governor, I'm not sure if we'd be there either way anyways.
Right, I agree. And so they are planning on going ahead with selling banners for veterans. So far, 11 have been sold, and my understanding is that soon they will be going up. And anybody that wants to join in the effort to honor a veteran is welcome to do that. They're going to have a reduced cost on that. It's going to be half of what they usually charge for one of those banners. And any of the profits are going to be donated to the Military Community Covenant to help the local veterans with any activities that are needed locally. So that, I mean, I definitely appreciated the idea to do that since I am on the Military Community Covenant, and we often have financial needs and don't have a lot of ways to fundraise. So they still are going to do the banners. Like I said, they'll probably be going up in stages rather than all at once like they usually are. So I don't know if anybody had any questions about any of that.
Just give me 1 second. It doesn't look like we have any questions in the queue, so.
How much are the banners, please?
I believe they're going to go for $250.
Okay.
They typically charge $500 for a business to do a banner, but they're going to have a reduced rate.
Thank you.
Okay. Pat, we have another proclamation.
Okay. This is a Town of Chelmsford proclamation for lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and queer Pride Month, June 2020. Whereas the Town of Chelmsford is a welcoming community and exceptional place to live, learn, work, play, and raise a family. And whereas Chelmsford recognizes the importance of equality and freedom. And whereas the nation was founded upon and is guided by a set of principles that includes that every person has been created equal, that each has a right to their life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness, and that each shall be accorded the full recognition and protection of law. And whereas the Town of Chelmsford lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and and queer community are a vital part of all fields and professions and contribute to a stronger community. And whereas the town of Chelmsford is dedicated to fostering acceptance of all its citizens and preventing discrimination and bullying based on sexual orientation and gender identity. And whereas Chelmsford is strengthened by and thrives upon the rich diversity of ethnic, cultural, racial, gender, and sexual identities of its residents, all of which contribute to the vibrant character of our town. And whereas the Centers for Disease Control recognizes that the LGBTQ teens are at higher risk to be victims of violence and have increased suicide rates. And whereas it is imperative that young people in the community, regardless of sexual orientation or gender identity, feel valued, safe, empowered, and supported by their peers, educators, and community leaders. Now, therefore, we, the Board of Selectmen, on behalf of the town of Chelmsford, hereby proclaim and recognize June 2020 as Lesbian, Gay, Bisexual, Transgender, and Queer Pride Month in the town of Chelmsford, and urge citizens to recognize the contributions made by members of the LGBTQ community and to actively promote the principles of equity and liberty. Signed this 18th day of May 2020 by the Board of Selectmen and sealed by the town clerk.
Okay, so if we could, Doug and Maura Snow wanted to know if they could just say a quick word, so if we could unmute their microphones. Hold on, let's get you unmuted.
Hear us now?
Yep, we got you.
All right. Thank you so much for the LGBTQ proclamation. Last year's proclamation resulted in nearly 1,000 of these handheld rainbow flags being distributed at the library, senior center, artisans exchange, and farmers market. In June 2019, rainbow flags flew on the Center for the Arts, the senior center, and the schools requested and received a total of 9 flags. The people who distributed last year's flags have created rainbowchelmsford.com to distribute rainbow flags in Chelmsford this year. In a nod to the pandemic, we also have rainbow face masks. If this board decides to allow seasonally appropriate non-governmental flags to fly on town buildings that want one, Rainbow Chelmsford will be happy to supply them with rainbow flags to fly in June. A generous group of LGBTQ residents and allies have provided ample funds for us to do this. Just let us know, and a flag and a face mask will be made available if you like. Thank you.
Thanks, Doug. Thanks, Maura. Okay, with that, we're going to move on to, anybody have any other questions or comments? Nope. All right, so we'll move on to open session. Carla and Rebecca Markey, and I think they're actually waiting. Pat, do you want to read the, is it a long letter they sent? Was that a, let me just look at the letter. Yeah, I guess it's a few paragraphs. Maybe we'll just have them speak. Could we let Carl and Rebecca Markey, can we activate their microphones and their videos?
I think we're on. Can you hear me?
Yes, you are.
Okay.
Yep.
I'm Rebecca and Carl's,
I'm Carl.
and we reside at 89 Dunstable Road here in North. We moved to Chelmsford in 1983, and at that time there was little traffic on Dunstable Road. Now we understand things changed a lot over time, and there's been quite a lot of development since that point. We've not only seen a significant increase in general traffic, but more importantly, an alarming increase of heavy trucks in the densely populated residential area. Not only is truck volume an issue, but speed, of course, is as well, with very few of the trucks observing the 30-mile-an-hour speed limit. Most go around 40 or 50 miles an hour. And of course, we have heavy trucks hitting potholes, manhole covers, storm drains, and they all shake our house. We have a stick frame balloon style house that is approximately 150 years old. It's in the middle of certification now to put it in the historic section of the town. When the heavy trucks hit all these, the house shakes. We now have a 20-inch crack in the wallboard beneath our bay window, that we believe was caused by the shaking of our home. We've been working with Sean Shanahan to determine what might have caused the crack, as well as with Mike as well. We've submitted pictures with our initial letter to get an idea of the heavy traffic portion on Dunstable Road. We've recently counted the number of dump trucks and open top 18-wheelers that pass by our home.
So last Wednesday, which was the 13th of May, between the hours of 9 a.m. and 4 p.m., we counted 62 heavy trucks go by our house. Last Friday, the 15th of May, between 8 a.m. and 1 p.m., we counted 37 heavy trucks. And today, between 7:30 a.m. and 3 p.m., we counted 60 heavy trucks. Now, these numbers don't include trash trucks, 18-wheeler freight trucks, box trucks, the LRTA buses, delivery trucks, oil trucks, utility trucks, just the trucks that go to and from the quarry. So we believe that all this heavy truck traffic should be required to avoid our densely populated residential area. We think these trucks have a couple of options. One is for them to go to and from the quarry via the Route 3 Westford Road interchange in Tingsboro, or to use Swain Road to avoid the Dunstable Road connection to Vinyl Square. So we appreciate your consideration of this issue and hope you're able to significantly reduce or eliminate the heavy truck traffic on the eastern portion of Dunstable Road.
Do you have any questions?
I don't see any. Let me just check the, there's nothing in the chat box. I mean, Paul, you want to talk about it, or Mike, do you want to talk about a truck exclusion of those
He's
roads?
he's waiting to be unmuted.
Yeah, we got him. Go ahead, Mike.
If I may, Mr. Chairman, I have been in contact several times with the Marquis as well as Sean Shanahan, and I'm sure he can comment on the inspection portion of this issue. So we talked quite a bit, as I said, the Marquis and I, and what I've done in the interim, I talked to DOT, and also one of the things that the Marquis brought up is they recall when they moved in 1983 that there had been they believe a sign prohibiting traffic on Dunstable Road on that lower portion between Swain and Vinyl Square. I talked to Steve Yonley and some of the other members of DPW who've been around since approximately that time, or our longest serving employees, and none of them have an independent recollection of this sign. DOT said they have no recollection of a sign being there, an official sign. But what we did talk about with Mass DOT is this could be eligible for a heavy commercial vehicle exclusion because we could create an alternative route, as the Marquis alluded to, either via Swain Road or going up and around towards Tingsboro. I mentioned that to the engineers at DOT. They think it's a possibility. We also talked about extenuating circumstances where there may be vibrations on some of these more historic homes in that lower end. So they've asked me to put together a submission packet, which will require an official traffic study. I've reached out to NIMCOG to do that. That's the Northern Middlesex County Governments. I usually work with Dave Tilton and Justin Howard. And Justin Howard got back to me. He said that happy to perform the traffic study necessary for the submission. They only suggested that we wait until we have more vehicles that are on the road as a result of the phased reopening, so that we don't have a skewed traffic count one way or the other that could be challenged. So they said they will check back with me in a couple of weeks and see what the traffic counts are looking like to see if they're at a normal volume, and then they'll perform an official count. And that's pretty much where we are with regard to the HCVE there. I did also try and reach out to Fred Merriam to see if he had any historic photos. I hadn't heard back from him, but I did go through some of the historic photos of North Chelmsford and some of the more recent ones in publications, and I could not find any evidence of the sign. And also with regard to the vibration, I did call the city of Cambridge, although they're not in the office due to COVID-19, because they at one point had tried to work on traffic restrictions relative to vibrations in the city. So I was looking for. So at this point, we will proceed with the submission of a packet requesting a heavy commercial vehicle exclusion just for lower Dunstable Road. But I will leave it to Sean Shanahan, our building commissioner, with regard to any comments on the vibrations and what may cause it. And before I do cut over, I just want to point out, we did have a recent traffic and safety committee meeting, and Chief Spinney and Lieutenant Colin Spence were present, and they said as a result of the letter from the Marquis, they had stepped up patrols in the area, and they had noticed some increase in traffic, but they hadn't recognized any violations by the trucks themselves. But to enforce that area, and they will look to bring out perhaps the truck team from the state police again sometime this year. That's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mike.
Fine.
What was that, Virginia?
I just said thank you for getting that moving.
Okay. I don't know if the Marquis said any other questions. I do know the town is also working on the potential, we're hoping, for an alternative route, which we'll be discussing, I think, further at another meeting, that dumps out on Route 40 as opposed to, Dunstable Road and some of the other roads. But do the Marquis have any other questions, or you?
I just wanted to say thank you so much for making the effort because, we lived through the BFI when they were at the end of the street a few years back, and, it was a lot at that point too, and that's cleared up, and then the quarry opened. So it just seems like one thing after another, but we really do appreciate giving it your attention, and because it's been pretty upsetting for us.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. All right, with that brings us to concerns about the Aggregate Industries. We do have an email there. Should we read that in the record?
I know John Wolchek is here.
John, you're here.
There he is.
There he is. Let's get him. He's unmuted. John?
Hello, everyone. Thank you for having me. I do not have a copy of the email in front of me. This is my first Zoom meeting, so I'm a little unprepared to go off screen here to pull that up. I don't remember exactly how. I'm sorry.
John, do you want that read?
It would be appreciated if you could. And then.
Right. Pat, do you have a copy of that? You can
Not at hand. I don't have one.
hold on. Give me 2 seconds.
I have it. Do you want me to read it?
Sure, please.
Hang on. So there's an email, there's two, there's one from John, and then there's a reply from Sue Rosa. They're both dated May 1st. Hi Sue, this is John Wojcik. I hope you are well and able to stay safe through all of this. I know you have so much on your plate right now and have so little time for anything else. I've been biting my tongue on this subject now for the past 2 weeks and remaining silent. However, I need to get this out to the town officials. So much has changed, but so much remains the same. Not only has paving begun, but nighttime paving has also begun. More than ever, the town of Chelmsford needs to step up and limit hours on Aggregate Industries, close them down after 9 p.m. Not only has the town been able to prove that there was ever a permit in place to allow all-night operations, Aggregate Industries has also not been able to provide any permit showing all-night hours of operation. We have requested this information citing the Freedom of Information Act. However, to date, we have not seen anything in regards to this request. Over the past 2 years, Mike McCall has been working on the many complaints that the residents of this town have had in regards to this facility. The Chief of Police and Lieutenant Colonel Spence have also done all they can in regards to speeding and noise. Since 1997, the Board of Selectmen have been dealing with complaints. However, nothing has ever been done. Now that the police resources are tied up or simply scaled back due to the virus, the trucks are speeding more than ever and creating more noise than in years past. It is very concerning having to deal with this virus, sheltering in place, not visiting our elderly parents, not being able to be social with friends and neighbors. A few of the many messages from the CDC is to stay healthy, exercise, eat well, and most of all, get the proper amount of sleep. Sleep is the most important to keep up our immune system and our overall health. Please do whatever you can to shut down evening hours of operation at the Chelmsford Aggregate facility. 9 p.m. is a reasonable hour, and it is 3 hours more than neighboring towns with their ordinances of hours of operations. They have at least 10 other plants they can pull material from. They won't lose any business closing down the Chelmsford facility in the evening. Lastly, what is the stench coming from Aggregate these past 2 weeks? Something is not right here. It is not a normal smell. It is worse than rotting eggs and petroleum mixed together. Something has changed and it is not good. On a good day, nobody looks into what they burn at this facility. Now that we are in the middle of a pandemic, are they doing anything they want? That smell finds it all the way to my house, and while others in town can open their windows at night, we are locked down. I can only imagine what the people in the trailer park and the surrounding apartments are dealing with. There was thick gray smoke coming out of the stack Wednesday morning, very unusual and not normal. I will be reaching out to the Board of Selectmen with a copy of this simply because they should be doing something about this as well. We are in the middle of a pandemic, time they step up to protect everyone in this town. I would like this to be seen by the other members of the Board of Health. However, I do not have their email info on hand. I will also be speaking with Lieutenant Spence in regards to the speeding and noisy trucks. In the meantime, all-night operations need to end at this facility once and for all. We are taking the health of not only me and my family, we are talking the entire town. Thank you for reading this. It is so very much appreciated. Please stay safe, and I hope you are doing as well as can be through all of this. If you are doing a Zoom Board of Health meeting next week, I will most likely find a way to join in for at least the public input portion. And this is a response from Sue Rosa on May 1st. Hi, John. I have read through your email and discussed the traffic issues with the police chief, who will increase patrol in that area. Next week, I will send one of my inspectors out to assess for any odor coming from the plant. The fire chief also follows up on odor, and I discussed the same with him. As far as the hours of operation, we have discussed this in the past, and it is out of my jurisdiction to set the plant hours of operation. Prior to your email today, my office has not received any complaints about the aggregate plant emitting recent foul odors. I have discussed this situation with Mike McCall again today, and will reach out to DEP again, as this is their jurisdiction. The Board of Health is having a Zoom meeting next Monday evening, and that agenda has been posted. There is no scheduled public input for that remote meeting. Regards, Sue Rosa.
Thank you, Virginia.
Yep.
If I may add to that a couple of things, I've noticed that, you know, yes, the speed has increased. I know the speed's increased everywhere, all over the Commonwealth. I know it's very hard to get a handle on that right now. I mean, this is a racetrack out here on 110. I mean, just not cars. I mean, cars, trucks, motorcycles. It's a free-for-all. One thing I noticed is the 40-mile-an-hour sign across the street from the lime quarry has been taken down again. This is a yearly occurrence in the spring. I mean, the thing's literally uprooted and on the ground. You know, a month ago it was standing there, and I go to the District 4, to the Highway Department every year for the same complaint, that somebody yanks it out of the ground and, you know, they leave it right there. But, you know, it just adds, you know, now instead of it being 40 miles an hour, legally, I guess it's 45, because if there isn't a sign that says it drops down, then it's the last posted miles per hour. So 45 is generally 50 miles an hour. I guess to Lieutenant Spence or Chief Spinney, maybe DPW, is why this is a thickly settled zone leaving Chelmsford Center. You know, it is 110, but, you know, per the Massachusetts laws, you know, we're a thickly settled zone. I mean, I think 35 miles an hour, you know, just till we reach the lime quarry would be reasonable.
Don, did you also want to say something about the sidewalks? You typed that in your response box here too.
I did, thank you. And, you know, now that we're, you know, we're kind of pushed to kind of stay local, but also get out and exercise and, you know, do whatever we can. The sidewalks here are horrible on 110. You know, it would be great if, you know, everybody within earshot could just someday just walk it once, you know, just get off the bike path, come up 110, turn around and come back down. They're horrible. They're horrible with holes and dips and, you know, they paved 110 here, you know, 5 or 6 years ago, but it didn't do anything to the sidewalks. Every single one of the neighbors here walks on the sidewalks. Everybody has dogs. We have 2 new babies in town, and you know, it would be nice if something could be done there. I know we're putting sidewalks in all over town for various projects, but these have just been neglected forever. You know, there have been water main breaks and they've been torn up and patched, but everything's falling apart. It's an ankle breaker.
John, I think there was, if I remember right, Emily or Paul, was there a let me just, Emily, did you have an update on the sidewalks in 110?
No, I haven't heard anything from the Massachusetts Department of Transportation since that meeting. We met in, I want to say February. I could pull up my calendar and figure it out. I think it was February. Might have been early March. With the Department of Transportation, and it was something I've been pushing for a while. I want sidewalks from the center of town down to basically the asphalt plant, because it's about 12% of our population that live there. There are about 1,000 units down at that end and along the route, and that's you know, if you count like 4 people on average in a unit, then it's you know, 11-12% of our population. So it's it would be worth looking into. DOT's problem with it is because of the multiple bridges and the wetlands and the already narrow road, that it is a multi-million-dollar project with serious structural engineers. Given the population, given the traffic, given the industry, and given the fact that we stuck all of the low-income housing down there, and people without a lot of income often don't have cars and need to access services, I think it would be a good investment. So they're going to look into it, and they should have a response at some point. I suspect that right now, given the state of things, with the belt tightening that's about to happen due to our economy being based on buying stuff and the lack of retail sales and the lack of people buying widgets, that we do not have the revenues for such projects. So I am extraordinarily frustrated with that for a multitude of reasons. I am sure John Wojcik is, you know, ripping his hair out at this point, and I'm so sorry. But I think that this is that this pandemic is going to have a couple of unforeseeable consequences, and some of that is going to be things like not repairing sidewalks or not putting in sidewalks or pushing infrastructure projects back even further, unless, you know, somebody gets wise to the whole economic driver that is infrastructure and actually starts investing again. I can send an email, but I don't know that I can do any more than that at this point. And I think the response is going to be, we gotta wait to see what happens with the finances.
Mike McCall is asking if you can chime in here.
If I may, Mr. Chairman, to you, members of the board, the public, and Mr. Wojcik, just a couple of points to update. After receiving the email from Sue Rosa, I did call in to my former contact at DEP, who has since left, but I was ultimately put in contact with the attorney that handles all the issues for the asphalt plants in the area, and that's Attorney Argento. We had a lengthy conversation about the situation out at Aggregate Industries. She had said that most communities deal with this when they have a particular ordinance relative to nuisance. And Mr. Wojcik did say one of the other communities had an ordinance. Looking at our ordinances, we don't appear to have anything that regulates manufacturing or industrial. There are some noise ordinances, but when speaking to Attorney Argento, she said the issue here is that this is an asphalt batching plant. It tends to be odorous, and it tends to have a volume of trucks, so they tend to operate in the evening. And unfortunately, DEP has no ability to regulate the speed or the volume or the hours of the vehicles that come through. And they do run right onto a state roadway. I did speak to Mass DOT, and pursuant to Mr. Wojcik's request last year, they are wrapping up their speed study. They said it just needs final approval, so we should get some indication of the minor changes. They indicated there's going to be some changes, they said, to the location and length of the 40 and 45 mile an hour sections of Route 110. As Mr. Wojcik alluded to, I've looked back through some of the various minutes of the Board of Selectmen going back over a decade, trying to determine, whether or not the board ever had the authority to control the hours of operation. And the only thing that I've uncovered, and which I shared with Mr. Wojcik in the past, was in 2008, Aggregate went to expand or get a modification on the fuel storage tank license, at which time many of these issues were brought up, and there was a public hearing, and the board at that time was looking to put restrictions on the hours of operation and other conditions, and Aggregate ultimately withdrew its request for the license. So it appears that was the board's attempts, and that was over 12 years ago, to try and put conditions on the hours of operation. But other than that, I cannot find anything. So I will continue to work with DOT to get some information. I know Chief Spinney said that anytime we have an enforcement issue, he will redirect his resources there. I will talk to him about that. And I did forward Mr. Wojcik's most recent complaint directly to the attorney that oversees compliance with the asphalt plants. So it's in their hands, and they will evaluate it. And I will get back to you with any input that I receive from either DEP or DOT.
That attorney is at DEP, Mike?
Yes.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks for that, Mike. John, any final comments, questions?
Yeah, just a couple, I guess. That's why it would be, first, I don't understand, when I talk with other members of Board of Selectmen in other towns, and they describe what type of business Aggregate is, it's solely up to the Board of Selectmen to give them hours or take hours away. If something is not right, the Aggregate plant in Littleton, those hours, the late hours of operation were taken away. They can be given back at any time as well. But speaking with a member on the board in Littleton, they said that, Aggregate is considered I guess it falls under the mining type of business. And that's something that the Board of Selectmen have powers of controlling, for the reasons of they are heavy trucks. It is a nuisance, whether it be, up there, it's particulate matter in the air, it's the sound of trucks. And the other thing that will help down here is if we can lower the speed limit to 35. you know, round the corner, get up to the lime quarry, and then, you know, bring it up to 40. I mean, it's very congested. There's a lot of housing up there, and I think that's reasonable. You know, lowering the speed definitely makes things quieter.
So, Mike or Paul, what are our powers of restricting hours of operation? What does that take?
As was stated earlier, we've researched this issue. I was on the board. I was with the board back in 2008 and such. It's a pre-existing non-conforming use. We don't have the legal authority to stop their nighttime operations. The only thing we do have is on Sundays. And Chief Spinney is on this call. He may want to comment in, but we don't have the ability. And I think as was noted earlier, the paving that they do and the paving that occurs in today's society occurs at night, primarily. You know, whether it's 495, 93, the airport, what have you. That's the nature of construction in the year 2020. As respect to the sidewalks and other issues, again, that's a state-owned roadway. The sidewalks may be in disrepair, but again, we don't have the authority as a community to go in and pave those sidewalks or perform any maintenance on those roadways. So again, we're hamstrung, which is why this issue has hung around for over a dozen years.
All right, well, I guess I'll let everyone go here. I wanted to just send out my appreciation to everybody that is within earshot here that works the front line and, you know, works with our police and our fire and our dispatch, and everybody's doing a great job. We have a niece who's she's a ICU nurse at Salem Hospital. She works in the COVID ward, and you know, all the work they do is tremendous. And I just wanted to send a hats off to everyone. Thank you.
All right, thanks, John. So that brings us to the next item is Dottie Jones, the Holiday Inn Express sign. Was someone going to read that into?
So, Mr. Chair, I have a subsequent email that Dottie sent over the weekend and asked to be read into the record before Sean responds, if that's okay. She could not connect to this meeting.
Okay.
Do you want me to read the one that's posted too, or can I just read this one? I'll do whatever you want.
Is there an issue reading a separate one than what was posted, Paul? No? Okay,
No.
go ahead.
Okay. So it says, this is dated Sunday, May 17th, from Dottie Jones, who resides at 23 Buckman Drive. Dear Select Board, on behalf of the residents of Buckman Drive, Larson Circle, and Diane Lane, we want to thank the Select Board, Building Commissioner, and Town Manager for allowing us to come before you on a number of occasions regarding the Holiday Inn Express sign. I would like to reference Sean Shanahan's letter to you dated April 30th, 2020 in regard to our request for an update on the Holiday Inn Express sign facing 495. Sean states that a public hearing was held. The planning board approved the application. No notice of appeal was filed within 20 days. We were told that we are not abutters, but in defining the word abutter, it states that anyone directly across a public way, 495, is considered an abutter regardless of the distance between the two. Not being considered abutters, no one on this side of 495 was aware of the public hearing, and therefore we were not in attendance. Sean states that his interpretation of Chapter 195 and the building permit granted is not in violation of the zoning bylaws. We have also read Chapter 195, which states specific regulations on number of signs, size of signs, rooftop signs, and illumination of signs, all of which we found to be in violation. please reference chapter 195-26, 30, 32, and 34. Sean states that the illumination of the sign facing 495 directed toward our homes is within acceptable range. We have been discussing this sign for 17 months now. The issue has always been, why was the sign permitted in the first place? Whether the Planning Board or Board of Appeals granted the variances allowing the Holiday Inn Express to have the signs they do, they did so without thought or consideration as to the effect such signage would have on a residential neighborhood. Sean was not the building commissioner during the construction of the hotel. We would like to thank him for all of his work in trying to rectify this matter. Kind regards, Dottie Jones.
All right, thank you. Sean, you want to respond at all to that, or do you? I know it's kind of last minute.
Yeah, so we looked back into the files and checked with the.
Somebody muted you, Sean.
It's saying I'm muted by the host.
You're.
All right, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yep.
So we looked at the variances and the special permits that were granted by the ZBA. There were 2 letters put into the record, one by Evan Belansky and one by the former building commissioner, Mark Dupel, stating that it exceeded the allowable number of signs, it exceeded the allowable square footage, and it also was installed, was going to be installed above the existing building height. All those requests were granted by the board, and that is my reasoning for my interpretation. We have gone out and purchased a light meter to test the nits that is emitted from the sign, and any signs in town now. We tested those that with the testing equipment at the hours of 10, 2, and 4 in the morning, which is what was requested, what is suggested by the manufacturer of the equipment we purchased. At every given time, it tested at a limit well below what we allow, which is 200 nits. It's testing at 196. We actually dialed it down to 97, I believe it was nits. And that's as low as that equipment can go with it functioning. And that's pretty much what we've done. We've taken rides through the neighborhood at all different hours of the night. And we've done what we can to try to work with the hotel owner to mitigate whatever we could. It has been brought down drastically, but it's still not to a point where they're happy.
So Sean, where Donnie is citing different sections of chapter 195, are those is that overcome by the permit that was granted?
Yes, so the sections of 195 that she is quoting in her letter deals with the number of signs, the height requirement, and all that is stated in the requests.
And for future, if there's a similar thing in the future, she says that abutters somewhere are defined and it includes people across the highway. Is that correct?
So the way that I think the terminology reads is across a public way. Defining 495 as a public way, I don't think is something that we've ever done.
Thank you.
All right, so Any further discussion by anybody on this? I don't see any questions. Let me just check. Yeah, I don't see any questions in the...
I'd just like to also acknowledge that as a result of some of the previous correspondence that Dottie had sent to us, Paul worked with the team to have public notices also triggered on the town website in addition to being published in the newspaper. So I think that's a positive move that will help communication going forward.
Okay. Next item in the open session is Anita Tini's email to the Board of Selectmen. I don't know if we can unmute Anita and turn. I can request her video. Actually, it doesn't look like she has video. Can we unmute Anita? Anita, are you there? Should we read her email in? I don't know if anybody has a copy of it.
Dan has a note in the chat that it appears her audio is not connected. So she would have to call in.
See if that will do anything. I can open the email. Pat or Virginia, do you have that email there?
I do.
I do not. I do not have it in here.
Should we just skip it, or
you want?
She has to read it into record, but
yeah.
Given that she would not be able to make comments after that, perhaps we should wait until she can.
Okay.
Maybe, so if Anita can hear us, she could probably dial in with her phone and then she could make her own comments. Is there a phone notice on the agenda, phone number?
Yep.
There is.
Yes.
Oh, perhaps we could.
And I think even when you log in.
If she's able to call in, we could come back to this agenda item.
Right.
Okay. Yeah, because there is, when she does log into the Zoom, even on her phone, it does give you a phone number and meeting ID that she can log into that way, dialing in. So.
Oh, so Anita just sent a chat.
Yeah.
No.
Anita said, "I can hear you. Can you please read it into record?" You want me to, Virginia, you want to read it? You want me to read it? I do. I found it.
I don't care. I can read it, Ken. You can respond to it.
No. Well, I'm just going to read it. I don't know necessarily.
Okay.
Oh, and she says she has no comments to make. She just wants it read. So I respectfully ask that my email be read into record of the meeting for April 21st, 2020. But at the time, we didn't have any open session items, so we didn't have it written in there. On March 30th, 2020, developer William L. Harvey III sent an email to 4 or 5 members of the Board of the Select Board and several other people from the town, including but not limited to Frank Good, head of the Sergeants Bargaining Union. In this email, the following was stated. In conclusion, I look forward to attending the next public Board of Select meeting where Angry Polly's failure to sign the 12-month extension as a result of now withdrawing his promise to seek employment will be a topic of discussion. Rest assured, yes, it was me that foiled the crying Polly act before the Board of Select Person executive session, which he promised with crocodile tears to seek employment, and the board extended his contract for 12 months. The crying act apparently worked on one select person changing her position, but I called the act out. The crying Polly's plan was hold on until the next Board of Selectmen election to get a pro-con elected, and then seek an extended contract with no intention of leaving. I'm very happy that the new language was added to the 12-month contract proposal, and now Angry Polly will not sign the contract, proof he never intended to look for a job. In conclusion, the profit margin from ready-way development is extremely high, and I'd be willing to make a significant financial donation to the town towards a town manager employment specialist to seek the replacement of Polly with a mentally stable town manager with no history of anger issues. In the meantime, I request my secretary to Google town manager's jobs to assist Polly in his agreed job search. God bless and stay healthy, William III. She then goes on to write, it appears that Mr. Harvey, a developer in our town, has some very specific information regarding the manager's contract. I'd like the board to explain how Mr. Harvey came into possession of the information that was discussed in executive session. I further ask the board to elaborate on what financial discussion, if any, were discussed with the developer, the head, the sergeant's bargaining unit, and 4 select board members regarding the remuneration for an employment specialist, as mentioned in the email. I also asked the board to discuss what internal investigations are currently happening to determine who is responsible for the breach of executive session. Finally, I respectfully ask the members of the select board to identify who received this email on March 30, 2020. Thank you, Anita Tanini. All right. I know she doesn't have any comments to make, but I would just like to address a few of the items in here that she is, and maybe I'll go in reverse of what she is asking. I received a copy of this email. I don't know of any financial discussions that took place between the developer, the head of the sergeant's bargaining union, any employment specialists. I have known nothing about what he is discussing there. I further don't know of any point up until that date of this writing of his email that there were any discussions of contract language in executive session. So I'm not sure what she means by that there was a breach of executive session. However, I would like to just go further and say I thought this email was terrible, and on so many levels. Horrified when I read it, shocked that someone would actually send it. I thought it was unjust and so many comments specifically against Paul as town manager. So that's my comments to be said about both his email and Anita's questions. Any other board member, if you'd like to also comment, feel free.
I think you've covered it, Ken.
Georgie, do you want to say something?
I just, yeah, I don't think I heard about that email till much after that, and I haven't seen Mr. Harvey for a long time. So I hadn't seen him for a long time prior to that as well. I also do think it's a little out of line, but maybe a lot out of line, but it's too bad. But I don't see that there was anything that was discussed in the letter that was really discussed in the executive session.
Okay. There's no other comments. We'll move on to committee vacancies. Pat, you want to go through those?
Okay, as of today, we have the following vacancies. There's one vacancy on the Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Committee.
Excuse me, it says Emily's trying to speak.
Yes.
No, I just wanted to go back and reiterate how unprofessional I found that initial letter that Anita Tinini was referencing, and how badly it reflected upon the letter writer. I find that kind of discourse to be completely unacceptable, unprofessional, and I would like to remind everyone that we are volunteers. This is our free time that we are volunteering to help the town, and given the low turnouts and low participation among the town public, I think that the least folks can do is not make grade school level insults and come up with stupid nicknames, and I find that level of I mean, like, I don't know how you can send that and think that that is professional, that it reflects well upon you as an adult, as somebody who apparently went to law school. Like, I don't understand why that is acceptable. And I've had it, and I realize that I am on Zoom and I am in my office right now, and so I don't actually have to look anyone in the eye, but I would be happy to do that once social distancing is over. And I found it to be appalling. And I love hearing from people. I really don't have time for people coming up with nicknames and childish accusations. And I would request respectfully that folks refrain from that in the future. If you need to talk about somebody in an email to one of us, please use their name. If you can't handle Mr. or Ms. or something, then just use their name. No nicknames, no ranting accusations, none of that. I don't know who leaked either. I would also like to state how angry I am that anything got out. I think that that was also unprofessional. I think it's illegal. I am appalled that anyone in that room leaked anything, and I think it's absolutely unacceptable that I continue to hear about leaks where people set things up and see if they can trap a leaker and figure out like all of this like backwards, what do you call it? I've lost the word. This machinations to get things out instead of just speaking plainly. I find the cloak and dagger, I find it to be unacceptable. I find the leaking to be unacceptable. I actually find the fact that all of those minutes were published on the internet to be absolutely unacceptable.
No,
I worked in publishing, and when you have drafts, you have naming conventions. And I think that it is appalling that people with advanced degrees can't figure out how to name a file so that you can see what is the draft, what is the raw file, and what is the final copy. There are very simple ways to name files. You should be able to do it. It is 2020. I don't want to hear that you are over 60 or whatever the excuse that you're coming up with, because this has been around for decades at this point. So please learn to read your files, learn to name them clearly, and the level of incompetence. And then I would also like to mention that raw notes were leaked. So nothing that had been confirmed, just basic notes so that we could talk about them later. So you got things that had not been confirmed or discussed. The point of executive session is to be able to discuss things that are private and for many reasons are protected by law, such as employee performance or personnel issues. I think that the behavior around this has been appalling and childish, and I'm as you can hear, I have taken off some of my filters, and I'm sick of it. So that's it. Thanks for letting me get that off my chest. Appreciate it.
All right, so we also had a request in the box from Frank Good asking if he could talk, but we still have him. Did he drop off here?
No, he's right there. He's on the video.
Oh, I got him. Frank Good asking if he could talk. All right, Frank. We still have him.
I'm here. Can you hear me?
No, he's right there. He's on
Yes.
the video.
Yeah.
Am I on audio? Hi, since my name was brought up and since my name was brought up by Ms. Tanini in that very strange email that she sent, I'm wondering exactly what she was alleging that I was partially partaking in, merely because Mr. Harvey attached me to an email that he sent to all of you. She is somehow now alleging or looking for some kind of investigation into some kind of remuneration of looking for a company to hire to do a job search to replace Mr. Cohen. Could someone explain that to me?
Frank, I think only Anita could, and she's not on.
Yeah, it's shocking that she wasn't able to get on tonight. She sticks her nose in everything, but yet when it comes time to actually stand up and speak for your own email, she was surprisingly unable to do so. I'm actually surprised we didn't read the full excerpt of the original emails, since to get a full context of the part in her email, which was just a small portion of the entire email. I'm surprised the entire first email wasn't read in its entirety. Any explanation for that? Can you read it?
I don't know if anybody else has it up in front of them. Maybe we can put it on for another when we have it in front of us and Anita can be on the call.
Or is it?
It's in the agenda.
It's posted, curiously posted.
It's a 7 ready way attachment in the agenda.
Right, it's on the agenda. Again, the whole Miss Tonini email is baffling to me. Apparently, I don't think she understood the sarcasm that Mr. Harvey was portraying there, and somehow, in her world, she thought there was some kind of something to be investigated. When in fact, I'm pretty sure anybody who reads that, and hopefully you guys read it out loud, will realize that it was merely sarcasm. That's how I interpreted it. But the fact that she thought she could throw my name into there like there was something that I did inappropriately, well, I have a problem with that. Major problem. Any allegations I ever make are backed with fact and evidence. Maybe we can get her online and she can explain what exactly she meant.
So Frank, I will say that, Virginia, you're right. It is on the entire email is on a link on the agenda. Not sure what to do about that. And I don't know if you want to read that entire email, but. Any other board comments about? Should we read it? Should we just leave it alone? Let we do this when Anita can get on the phone?
I think we've spent enough time on this.
So, do you want me to read it? And I'm also capable of muting
Emily's
myself.
offering in the chat.
So I can easily click my unmute button. No, I've got it. So I'm now unmuted. So I will mute myself when my kids are coming. But here you go. If you want this entire email written 3/30/2020 at 12:48 a.m., this is the one you want? So something 10 of 1 in the morning, you would like me to read this entire email? Sergeant Good? Thumbs up, thumbs down.
I'm a town resident tonight. You can just call me Frank.
I think we spent enough time on this.
So whatever the one is listed as 7 ready way.
Yeah, I believe this is the one. You want the whole thing read?
Yeah, it's on the agenda, right?
Please.
Okay, here we go. Sure. William Harvey at 3:30 on Monday, 3/30/2020 at 12:48 a.m. addressed this to Paul Haverty, our lawyer, Sean Shanahan, Mike McCall, and 13 others, including the entire board, the entire select board, Vera, Clausen, Marty, Allen, a whole bunch of people. I don't even know who these people are. So dear Attorney Haverty, as you are aware, Commissioner Shanahan, without cause, revoked the certificate of occupancy for 7 Ready Way at the direction of Angry Polly. I would have now expected that Angry Polly would have instructed Commissioner Shanahan to reinstate the certificate of occupancy after learning his actions were the result of an apparent anger episode combined with misinformation, most likely coming from his basement-dwelling girlfriend. Angry Polly's actions, in my non-medical opinion, are indicative signs of severe psychological illness. I can attest that I received an A in college psychology and further learned various aspects of psychological illness from my uncle, Dr. Stephen Gregory Cronin, who was a world-renowned, as written, forensic psychiatrist who I believe could have assisted with Angry Polly's anger issues. As of date, I have not received notification of reinstate of the certificate of occupancy. I can only be of the opinion that Commissioner Shanahan has drunk the Cohen Kool-Aid. I was always of the opinion that Commissioner Shanahan was a Cohen puppet in the town hall of Cohen Kool-Aid puppets. I am not surprised, however. I am completely appalled by the continued actions of Angry Polly and Puppet Shanahan purposefully and wrongfully withholding the certificate of occupancy, knowing that closing on 7 Ready Way is this week with a sale amount of $900,900 even. Attorney Haverty, I have the complete confidence that you will advise Angry Polly and Puppet Shanahan to reinstate the certificate of occupancy forthwith. I know that Angry Polly has been extremely upset from your past ethical advice and being unable to control you, which was the reason he attempted to have the Board of Selectmen not to have your contract extended. There were 3 members in favor not to renew and 2 in favor to renew. When I got word of this, 1 phone call changed the vote and Angry Polly did not get his way. I can only image the temper tantrum Angry Polly had in his office after that vote. I have also been advised that Angry Polly's basement-dwelling girlfriend's personal files were removed prior to a performance review. This reliable information was divulged to me by a selectman, and I suggest the claim be investigated. In addition, I would also suggest that the Board of Selectmen further discuss, do I have to read her name? Regarding her late night, midnight phone call to a select person, antagonizing this individual to vote to renew Angry Polly's contract. She further commented to this select person that she was on the phone with a crying Polly, at which time this select person stated to the effect, "Why are you and Paul talking at this hour?" I request that the topic of late night after working hours Cohen phone calls with a subordinate female employee be of discussion with the Board of Selectmen. This conduct is completely unacceptable, although Cohen needing a shoulder to cry on may be medically necessary, but I am certain the town of Chelmsford's liability insurance would have a different view. I look forward to receiving a letter reinstating the certificate of occupancy before noon Monday, March 27, 2020, with an apology letter. I will frame this reinstatement letter and hang it next to the framed reinstatement letter of my building permit for 1 through 3 Hildreth Street, which Angry Polly failed to stop. In conclusion, and this is Anita Tanini's quote, in conclusion, I look forward to attending the next Board of Select meeting where Angry Polly's failure to sign the 12-month extension as a result of now withdrawing his promise to seek employment will be a topic of discussion. Rest assured, yes, it was me that foiled the Crying Polly Act before the Board of Select Person executive session, which he promised with crocodile tears to seek employment if the board extended his contract for 12 months. The Crying Act apparently worked on one select person changing her position, but I called that act out. That Crying Polly's plan was to hold on until the next BOS election to get a pro-Cohen elected and then seek an extended contract with no intention of leaving. I am very happy that the new contract language was added to the 12-month contract proposal, and now angry Polly will not sign the contract, proof he never intended to work for a job. In conclusion, the profit margin from ready-way development is extremely high, and I would be willing to make a significant financial donation to the town towards a town manager employment specialist to seek the replacement of Polly with a mentally stable town manager with no history of anger issues. In the meantime, I will request my secretary to Google town manager jobs to assist Polly in his job search. God bless and stay healthy. William L. Harvey III. I did my best to read all of the grammatical errors in there. I'm appalled by that. And again, it was sent at 12:48 in the morning. So I am just about done with receiving that kind of correspondence.
Frank, are you good?
What's
Is that what you wanted?
Is that what you wanted?
I thought the drama added to that. I think it could have just been read normally, but the drama.
It's hard to read that normally.
Well,
it's badly written.
Professionalism thing, I think, really, but.
There's no professionalism in there. And there's.
You could have just read it.
I could have, but there's a bribe. There are insults. There's medical advice given. I'm sorry. There's no way to read that straight.
All right, we have a lot to go through tonight, so if Frank's good and everybody's good, then we'll move on to the next topic here.
Yeah, I just the whole redacting, uploading the improper files. A lot of this was created by his own making, and ultimately, I'm not so sure Ms. Tonini did Mr. Cohen any favors by doing this. I think in her mind, she thought she was doing him a favor by somehow calling you and me out. But I truly don't think Ms. Tonini did anybody any favors tonight. So,
all right, thanks, Frank.
Thank you.
That brings us to committee vacancies. Pat, you want to run through those?
Sure. We have the following committee vacancies as of May 18th. There's one vacancy on the Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Committee. There's one vacancy on the Center Village Master Plan Implementation Committee. 2 vacancies on the Community Action Program Committee. 1 vacancy on the Conservation Commission. 5 associate member positions on the Council on Aging. Cultural Council has several vacancies. You can have up to 21 members. There's 1 vacancy on the Energy Conservation Committee. 4 vacancies on the Holiday Decorating Committee. 2 vacancies on the Middlesex Canal Commission. Parade Committee is still accepting all applicants. There's 1 vacancy on the Permanent Building Committee, 1 vacancy on the Personnel Board, 5 vacancies on the Public Celebrations Committee, 1 vacancy on the Recycling Committee, 2 vacancies on the Skate Park Committee, and 2 vacancies on the Tree Committee. If you're interested in applying for a position on any of these committees, you can fill out an application on the town's website or at the town manager's office.
Thank you. And we're going to go to meeting minutes.
Yeah, this since a couple of the issues that we have been meeting in executive session have been concluded, we can now release some of those executive session meeting minutes. So I'll make a motion that we release the executive session meeting minutes for September 23rd, 2019, Part 2, and December 16th, 2019, Part 1, which both have to do with the binder pump policy, which was recently modified.
I'll second.
A motion second, all in favor. George?
Aye.
Emily?
Aye.
Virginia?
Aye.
Pat?
Aye.
I vote aye. 5-0.
And I'll also make a motion that we release the executive session meeting minutes for January 27th, 2020, Part 3, executive session meeting minutes for February 10th, 2020, executive session meeting minutes for February 25th, 2020, and executive session meeting minutes from March 5th, 2020, Part 3, and executive session meeting minutes from April 21st, 2020. These all have to do with the extension of the town manager's employment agreement.
Second.
A motion and second, all in favor, George?
Is this to be released or not released, Pat?
This is to be released. We've already approved them. This is to be
Okay,
released.
fine. Okay, aye.
Emily?
Aye.
Virginia?
Aye.
Pat?
Aye.
Aye. So that's 5-0. All right, that brings us to, we're going to need to unmute Attorney Hauser's microphone. That brings us to the UMass Lowell West Campus demolition. If we can get, if I get Doug up here, 1 second.
Mr. Chairman and members of the board, can you hear me at this point?
Yes, we can.
Okay, thank you for your time this evening. Try to get to some substantive issues that I'm sure you'd rather deal with. First being a discussion about the University of Massachusetts West Campus site. There are two elements that I'd like to briefly discuss tonight with you. One is the status of the demolition process that's going on there, and the second part of this would be to introduce you to the we appear to be close to a final agreement with the chosen developer of the site. We anticipate coming before the board on June 1st to address more specifics on each of these topics. When the time comes, I'll ask to defer over or allow or unmute Steve Dazzo of Hanover Companies to be able to speak. As for the demolition issues, as you're aware, there was a partial collapse. The owner of the property has undertaken and retained a licensed professional who has been retained and who is in the process of and has already filed some of the required reports with the Mass DEP. The site has been stabilized. The pile of rubble has been covered. He has already submitted a non-traditional work plan to the Department of Environmental Protection and is in the process of trying to get the site contractors under contract with bids and then to proceed with the work. Samples have been taken, and as far as we're aware, there's no issue of safety whatsoever. We are keeping the town informed of things as we go forward, and we anticipate that the licensed professional will be able to join us at the meeting of June 1st before the board and explain in greater detail the process that will be followed, the reporting requirements that have to be met. But we can tell you that this licensed contractor is well-versed in environmental demolition projects. He worked on the Danvers State Hospital project, which was a significant undertaking. So this is well within his abilities to monitor and to assist us with. That's so where we stand with respect to the demolition. My goal is if there are inquiries by anybody regarding the project or the demolition, if people would email me, I'll be happy to try to get responses to them as we deem appropriate. But for the time being, we just want to go through follow the rules and regulations of the DEP. And I think that's the way we will be going forward for the next several weeks. The second part of this evening's discussion that we'd like to do is I'd like to turn it over to the selected developer, or we believe to be the developer, and we're thrilled to be working with them, the Hanover Companies, and their representative, who's hopefully on the line, is Steve Dazzo, and along with David Hall, and they can give you a little background about the Hanover Companies and their reputation and their projects that they've completed in Massachusetts and elsewhere. So with your permission, I'll turn that over to Mr. Dazzo, if you could be unmuted.
Hey, Doug. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yeah, I think we can. Hi, Steve.
Yes, we can.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is Steve
Perfect.
Bozzo.
Perfect. Thank you, Doug. Mr. Chairman, members of the board, thank you for this, your time this evening. We're excited to be here and announce as the developer of the proposed or future proposed project at the UMass West campus. I believe David Hall, my colleague, is also on the line as well. And as Doug said, I just wanted to take a few moments to give you a brief background on Hanover. We won't be presenting any specifics or getting into a formal presentation of any projects this evening, but we look forward to working with the town over the coming weeks to do so. So just a brief background on Hanover. We are a privately held multifamily development company headquartered in Houston, Texas, with a national platform and a development history of over 60,000 apartment communities or apartment homes since our inception in 1982. Here in Greater Boston, that totals over 7,000 apartment homes. And well, this project would represent our 26th project and our 19th Eastern Massachusetts town. We are, as I said, a privately held development company that specializes very specifically in apartment homes that are very high quality, that the communities that we work in are very proud to have in their communities. And so with that, we look forward to continuing and starting to work with the community and the town in the coming weeks on the project. And as Doug mentioned, we'd like to hold all questions and comments at this time until we make a more formal presentation.
Thank you, Steve.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, if you have any questions of us, but other than that, that I hope brings you up to speed as to what's going on that particular site.
Doug, I think George Dixon has a question for you.
No, I did have earlier, I think, but I was muted, whatever. It's no problem. It sounds like you have a pretty good team there, Doug, so good luck.
Thank you. We're very excited. I do think we have a very good team going forward, and I appreciate the opportunity to work with these folks. I think the town will be quite happy.
And Virginia, did you have a question?
I do. When we get back together on June 1st, could part of that briefing address the 5 items that were in the demolition order and the timeline or how they were addressed? And could we also address the permitting requirements for DEP and how they were contacted and, you know, how that whole process rolled out?
Sure, we'll be happy to do that. Mr. Grinnell, who is our consultant, will be available that evening and can go into greater detail as to the exact process he's been following and his experience with DEP, filing the required, pre-work reports, the analyses that have to be done of before abatement can or can't be done, what abatement will be covered, when does the work actually get performed, how long it will be performed. We'll have all of those answers, I hope, at that meeting. But he has been retained to do so.
Thank you.
And, he's moving ahead very quickly.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. Anything else, Doug? You all set?
On as for the UMass Lowell campus, I think we're set unless there are any other questions.
Okay. You want to move on to Charles Way?
Certainly, I just wanted to thank the Hanover representatives for making themselves available this evening.
Yep.
If you'd like, Mr. Chairman, I will now address the North Charles Way issue, 150 North Road. I represent the current owners of that property, who are Mike and Joan Sheehan. They've owned that property for decades. It's the property that is on what I call the southerly side of Charles Way, which is the undeveloped parcel or parcels. It's quite extensive in terms of the acreage. It's over 8 acres of land. In my letter of March 17th that I sent to the board, I tried to outline a concept plan or an action plan to be followed here to make what I hope is a win-win-win situation for both the town, the residents who are already on Charles Way, and the owner of the parcel, my clients, the Sheehan's. I don't want to be too redundant. You guys have a busy meeting. I'll be very quick, and if you want me to skip anything, Mr. Chairman, please let me know. The short and sweet is Charles Way is a failed subdivision technically by law. Charles Way was being constructed in the 1980s. The bond that was posted by the developer with the bank was never posted properly, and then the bank failed after all the permits have been, and occupancy permits have been issued for the properties that currently exist on Charles Way. So we had homeowners living in houses along what I consider a private road at this point, which has never been formally accepted by the town because none of the engineering work required for public acceptance has been performed. The unfortunate part about that is, notwithstanding the fact that the bond was failed and that the town never approved it, took the project as a public way, a public street, the town has nonetheless treated it like a public way. It has installed sewer services, water services, it has snow plowed, it has done all sorts of maintenance work as if it were a public way. And that's just not permissible under the law. You can't benefit some people with a private way and not others. The reason we're coming before you, my clients are coming before the board, is we have a remedy for this, but my clients are looking to be able to develop their land, and the only way that they can do that without using the Old Town Way, which is behind them, which is an option for them, but the preference would be to use Charles Way once it becomes an accepted public road. In order to do that, there has to be, the engineering work has to be done, but more importantly, the town has to either take the property by eminent domain or some other legal means, and in order to allow the town to exercise control over that road. Technically or legally, the developer still owns that road, even though the developer plainly has been in default for 30 plus years. So the issue's got to become of how to work with the town that will allow the town council to work with us to develop a process by which the town gains control over Charles Way. My client is offering to contribute a substantial amount of money towards the engineering costs that are needed to get this road to be accepted so that the town can then properly do the things it's supposed to do on that road, which is to maintain it for the benefit not just of those residents, but everybody that uses the road. That would then in turn allow my client to go through the planning board process, and he's going to do pretty much a conventional subdivision of land, 1 acre lots, single family homes. Right now he has a couple of frontage lots on North Road that he could do automatically. Most of the other lots would be able to get their frontage off of Charles Way. And I outlined that in my letter. So I saw it as a 4-step process. The first is that the town has to confirm that Charles Way has not been accepted as a public road. I'm very positive of that. I have spoken to the town engineering department in the past, and they so confirmed. The second step would be for the selectmen to allow the town council to work with us to identify the steps that the town could undertake to acquire ownership of Charles Way, whether that is by eminent domain or some other legal means. And that would in turn would allow the town to have control of that road. And simultaneously with that, we'd have a side agreement or a letter agreement between my client and the town that says my client's willing to contribute a substantial amount of money towards the engineering costs to solve this problem once and for all. And it would be a formal agreement that he would get subdivision approval in the normal process, everything above board, everything transparent, with the condition being that his approvals, once approved, would allow him to go forward if and only if Charles Way is accepted as a public way. And at that point, his money would then go hard, but not until then. But as I see it, it's a simple, straightforward approach to a very complicated problem that's existed now for actually almost 40 years. And I hope it'll be a solution that is acceptable to the town, because if we don't take action appropriately, it's just not appropriate for the town to be, it's treating it like a public road, and it's giving all these services for a private road. It does not do that for anybody else that's on a private road. So we can't have our cake and eat it too. So I'm just asking that the board authorize town manager, town council to work with us to develop a process to allow these steps to occur and cure a long outstanding problem. Thank you.
Thank you. Let me get Paul on here. Yep. Hold on one second, Paul. There you go.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Attorney Hausler, for the presentation. As Attorney Hausler is aware, this is not a new issue with the community. It's gone on for some years. I think it's been a couple of years since we've had meetings about this project with the abutters. I mean, this is not the only abutter to the property, and there have been conflicts with the abutters. And what I asked Mr. Chairman is, Assistant DPW Director Steve Yonley is on this call. He has the most background knowledge on this. I'd like Steve to weigh in with his comments in terms of how we can move this forward.
All right, so let me get Steve up here.
Hi, good evening.
Yeah.
Coming?
You there, Steve?
Yep.
All right.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, so what Attorney Hausler said was, is more or less the case. A few points, that he did bring up that I just would like to take the opportunity to correct. The water line would have been installed when the subdivision was built in the 80s. And the Sewer Commission actually took an easement in the mid-90s through the Board of Selectmen to run the sewer line up there. That was contract 94-2, I believe. So that, those things were done the way they should have been. As has been the long-standing practice, well before my time with the Department of Public Works, if a road was constructed to be a town road, to be an accepted town road, once final pave was installed, we did begin to provide snow plowing services. The previous Public Works Director, Jim Pearson, always believed that people on those homes, it's not their fault that, the developer took off, the bank went under, or whatever the case may be. They're paying their taxes. So we did provide plowing services. We still do plow that road. The only maintenance we do on it currently is we will patch around the sewer manholes, because those are ours. And I remember a few years ago, we cut up a tree in the guise of public safety during a blizzard type of thing. Otherwise, you can ask the residents up there, and I know, as town manager was just stating, we've had a few meetings with the abutters. I've had meetings with the abutters. Probably this goes back to before Mr. Pearson retired in 2012. We met with Attorney Hausler's client and an engineer, had some discussions about the same type of approach. We met most recently maybe 6 months ago, 9 months ago. I honestly don't remember, with, trying to figure out a way. And then, it comes to the front of the stove, and then it kind of goes off. So I guess, Attorney Hausler's letter to the board is, now we're looking to move forward with an idea. I think the plan is certainly something that we can work with. I think it'd be wise to speak with the abutters again. I know there were a couple that were kind of more vocal, or kind of leading the neighborhood on this issue. I think it would be prudent to keep them in the loop. But at DPW, we're certainly willing to work. As the board knows, over the past few years, we've been coming in with 4 or 5 of these kind of, unaccepted streets that have fallen through the cracks and trying to clean them up. Eventually this one was going to come up on the list and we would be acting on it. So if this helps push that along and get a little quicker, then hopefully better for everyone.
Okay. So, anybody have, let me just check, make sure there's no questions.
I have a couple questions, or just, I'd like to make a couple comments.
Okay.
My first comment is, can we have an opinion or an input or a review of this letter from our town council? Or have we done that already?
But I think that's what, Doug, you're asking for, is for you to start working with town council, right?
No, I'm asking for town council to provide the selectmen a written opinion or a verbal opinion on this. At the bottom of page 2, it says that there's a plan attached. There's no plan in what I have received, so I'd really like to see what that plan looks like. And I understand there's been a lot of discussions with the abutters, but I'm also wondering if it would be prudent to put something on a future agenda where we can get Attorney Haverty's input and also allow the abutters a chance to speak directly to us. I mean, I agree we got to figure out how to work this. I just think we should do some homework as a board. And the other thing I'll just want to mention is this letter dated March 17th. And I know that was just right at the peak of when the health crisis hit, but the first time I've seen it, this letter is in the packet for this meeting on May 18th. So if we could, I don't know where it got held up, but it might have been helpful to have it when it was released.
Well, I think it got delivered to town hall.
Yeah, and I'm not looking to ding anybody. It's just a comment that it's a lot of times we don't get the material till it's in the packet and it comes in before that.
Okay. But Doug, what are you asking for tonight?
I'm asking for I didn't want to take it upon myself to be calling town council and trying to discuss something unless he had board authorization to go forward, specifically to discuss an appropriate mechanism, either, for the town to solve the problem and how to get control over Charles Way one way or the other. And then based on him being able to do that work, then be authorized to speak with me to develop a plan of action that we could present to the Board of Selectmen. And of course, a butter should be involved in that process at that point in time as well.
So I think we're saying the same thing. I'm just asking for a step that says that I'd like some validation from town council to the board of what's stated in this letter. That's all. And then I think it makes, for me personally, I think it makes perfect sense to have you guys start a conversation, but the first premise is to make sure that we all agree what the problem is.
Doug, can you wait? Can we talk to the town council and give you an answer at our next meeting in 2 weeks?
That would be wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay.
May I make one quick comment though about the abutters? Sure. And I recognize, because in the past, there has been some discussion of this in the past, many years ago. The abutters clearly do not want to see any further development on the other side of the street. So of course, I anticipate that they're not going to be happy about any action that the town takes, especially that one that would maybe result in the development of that land. That having been said though, I think the town has to take the position that is going to be a public way, and that if it's going to be treated like a public way, then it's got to be accepted as a public way. or these abutters, then they're the ones that have to do all the costs associated with maintaining the road. I don't see why they'd want to do that, but I'm happy to listen to them again. But ultimately, the town has to make the decision on how to make this a legal, proper resolution, and not let it be directed by the abutters, but let it be directed by the law. That's all I ask. Thank you for your time, though.
Paul, could we double check to see if we have the plans that are referenced and send them out to the board?
Yes, I'll check.
Thank you so much.
I will.
All right. If there's no more questions, and I don't see anything in the chat box, nothing queued, and nobody signaling they have any questions, we'll move on.
Thank you. I appreciate your time, everybody. Good night.
Thank you, Doug.
Thanks, Doug. Thanks, Attorney Hauser. Yep. And that brings us to Mike McCall, Town Budgetary Fiscal Trends Analysis. And Mike, I know you have, I think you told me earlier today you had 26 slides. And this is going to be recapped a lot in the tri-board meeting, correct?
Yes. Yes, Mr. Chairman.
So if we could do a higher level, and unless someone wants to go into the full details.
It's up to you, Mr. Chairman, how you wish to proceed. If you want, we could just go very quickly through the slides, and I won't spend too much detail. Either you can let me run the screen, or you run the screen.
Let me just get in here. You want the executive summary or the presentation?
If we do the presentation, I think we can move through it very quickly, and I can let you go through. I would just preface it, Mr. Chairman, by saying what my intent here was essentially to do a SWOT analysis of the town's finances, recognizing the unprecedented financial crisis that we're coming into. And so what I did was I went through some of the materials that we've been provided for the last 6 years from Powers and Sullivan that perform our audited financial statements. So I took those, as well as information from the Department of Revenue through the Division of Local Services Data Bank, information from the U.S. Bureau of Labor and Statistics, Bureau of Economic Affairs, Census data from UMass Boston Center for Social and Demographic Researching on Aging, as well as town budget books and our forecast. And then I went through, there's an ICMA, ICMA is the International City County Management Association publication called Evaluating Financial Condition, a handbook for local government. What I did, Mr. Chairman, was I applied some of this data to the financial trends that they look for to indicate whether or not your community is functioning well and you're in a good financial state. So if you go to the next slide, Mr. Chairman, what we have there, that's just a very quick overview of a comparison of our revenues and expenses for the last 6 years from the audited financials. And you'll see that we've ended in the right-hand column, we've ended positive every year. Those are in the millions of dollars. And so even though there's been some fluctuation up and down, the trend is that we've been landing in the black for those years. And that, according to ICMA, is a positive trend. So that's favorable for the town. You can go to the next slide. That's a look at what they deem government-wide ratios. You look at the activities that are conducted within the town financially, whether it's the government side operations or our business side operations, that being fees and other business-like activities that we perform. And what you're looking at is whether the town is cash solvent, which means that it can pay its short-term debts, budget solvent, which means it's able to pay its budget through the fiscal year, and whether there's a long-term solvency, which means that we can weather a long-term storm, as well as service solvency to ensure that we can continue to provide the services. Overall, the numbers there reflect favorably upon the town. The one thing that is of some concern is the expenses per capita in the middle. They are tending to rise. The growth rate over those 6 years was 3.1%. But generally, overall, the town is in a good financial position with its cash reserves. It's one of its strengths. and it will help us as we go forward managing this crisis in the next 2 fiscal years. We can go on to the next slide, please. This is just a breakdown, a 5-year comparison using a pie chart, and I have the actual numbers below. But some of the strengths in terms of our revenues, as you can see, is we generate an awful lot of our revenue from our property taxes. We're self-reliant in that regard because what we've seen is a decline in state aid over the last few years. We're not receiving state aid at the same rate that we had in almost a decade ago. So it's a strength that we have a robust tax base, and it's helping us, and it will also help us if there's a dramatic cut in state aid going forward. We'll be able to rely on our own property taxes. The one caveat there, though, is the elastic revenues, which are motor vehicle excise, hotel, and meals tax. They're going to be impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic. As you well know, we've all been in lockdown. And that is a stark contrast to the Great Recession. We were able to rely on those funds during the Great Recession, and we won't have that in our back pocket as we go forward in the next 2 or 3 fiscal years. And you can go to the next slide. Here you can see, as I indicated, the state aid, the overall growth rate has been 2.5%, which is just slightly above inflation. But where we've seen the lowest growth is in our Chapter 70, which is the largest segment. We do get some growth on the unrestricted general government aid. That's the part that tends to increase year over year. But where we really need it is in Chapter 70, and that has been pretty much flat for the last 6 years or more. Go forward. Next slide, please. And this is just a graphic representation of those trends. Our tax levy, which reflects our increasing property values in town, our tax levy has been increasing as a percentage of total revenue. Our state aid has been on a decline as a percentage of total revenue. And those elastic taxes, those revenues I mentioned earlier, you can see how those have increased year over year for the last 6 years as we've been able to capture the changes in our economy, people buying new cars, eating out more, and that's worked to our advantage in recent years. Next slide. Similarly, a graphical representation of our expenditures, and you can see that over the 5 years, the areas that have grown most have been our fixed costs. Those feature our pension liabilities, health insurance, contractual bargaining agreements, and education is continued to increase. So those are areas that really hinder our ability to use discretionary spending. So we have to be mindful of those, and increasing fixed costs is actually not something that you want to see per the ICMA trend monitoring system. So that's one of the few things that's not working in our favor at the moment. Next slide, please. Again, revenue, I think we went the other way. Got to go forward. Yep. Again, total expenditures, you can see they have been increasing, and there's a breakdown up top, column by column, of the various areas that are reported by the Division of Local Services. General government has grown a little faster than others, but the largest by far area expense-wise is education, and that again is growing at 3.6%, which is higher than the rate of inflation, and so that is of concern. So next slide.
Mike, just so I understand the terminology, general government is like the town hall staff, is that what that is? Excluding public safety and education and...
Yes, those are the areas that I tried to get a better definition, but that's my interpretation from the DLS website. They give you this breakdown. I can direct you to that slide.
No, that's fine. I just, go ahead. Thank you.
That, I believe your assessment is spot on. So next slide. One of those fixed costs that keeps going and is outpacing the rate of inflation is employee healthcare costs. So you can see the trend in the top, and I put the numbers down below, and you can see that the growth rate of our healthcare costs over the last 6 years has been growing at a rate of over 3%. And you can see that the number of full-time equivalents that we have in town at Town Hall is only grown by 1.31%. And if you look at the number of full-time employees versus our population growth, it's even lower. We have only 7 full-time employees for every 1,000 residents. And the last line is the consumer price index, which reflects the inflation rate and the growth there. So again, it's a fixed cost. It's one that we have to abide by, and it's something that's continuing to increase. Next slide, please. This reflects our tax levy. The lighter portion is the override capacity. The middle is our levy limit, and in between the levy limit and the top of our current levy, there's a very thin brown line, which is our excess levy capacity. Each year, our levy limit increases by 2.5% plus new growth. And right now, we're coming very close. Our tax levy is coming very close to our levy limit. It's considered not so much a weakness, but more of a concern. But it's something that we need to focus on new growth each year. That is the fastest way to create the distance between our levy limit and our levy. And if we continue to have the new growth we've experienced before, and we still have growth going on despite the COVID-19 pandemic, there's construction going on, we should continue to have some excess capacity, but we would like to see that number increase going forward. Next slide. And this is just a breakdown of the tax levy. The bulk of our property taxes have been coming from our residential levy. As you well know, we had a change. We did have a shift in the tax rate. So you've seen a decrease in the residential levy in recent years. The bottom portion of the slide indicates our assessed values, and that's an overall indication of the health of the economy and the value of our properties. They've continued to go up, and as they go up, as a consequence, we've been able to increase our tax levy, which allows us to provide the services that we do. Next slide. This just reflects the changes in our property tax value, our property tax bill. The average single-family home bill has increased in the last 6 years. The growth rate has been 2.74%. The 5-year increase has been approximately $888 on average, and the 15-year increase has been about $2,791. We currently rank 73 out of the 351 cities and towns with regard to our tax rate and our average tax bill. Next slide. Although this is a technical trend decline, we're still getting over 98.5% of tax collection, but the ICMA does look for any downward trends, and they do consider it something to be concerned about. But if you look at it, it's almost de minimis. The change that we've had healthy collection rates in recent years, although that could change depending upon the financial circumstances. But going into this, we've had strong collections, again, at well over 98.5% in recent years. Next slide, please. The debt structure. So this is one area that it works in our favor, but it's also an area that it's an opportunity for the town. We have front-loaded a lot of our debt, as you can see at the top part in the chart. In the next 5 years, 2020 through 2024, we have a considerable amount of our debt to be retired, 61%. And over the next 10 years, the remaining 39% will be retired. And we don't have any debt spanning out in those last 15 years. So what the town could do, we could leverage that as we want to take on new projects, or if we want to refund like John recently did, John Souza that is, with some of our bonds, we could actually look at spreading this out. That would lower our payments on debt service. We might be able to free up some additional monies. Next slide, please. And as I indicated before, our debt service, which is a non-discretionary expense. It is on the decline as we retire that debt. And below is a 10-year debt service projection. We have sewer betterment debt. We have some excluded debt and non-excluded debt that we have for capital projects and others, and those will be coming off in the next 10 years, which will allow us to take on new projects. And as you well know, the school administration is looking at some point to get a new high school in line to be built. So we would have some potential room in our debt structure to handle some of those costs. Next slide. Things that run in the town's favor again, and the ICMA looks at these favorably. We've built a healthy stabilization fund. The top is the balance that's increased over the last 6 years, and below you can see stabilization as a total percentage of revenue. It looks favorably upon the community, the amount that we have and the percentage that we have as total revenue, and it will position us well as we go into the next 2 fiscal years if we have to deal with any potential shortfalls as a result of COVID-19. Next slide, please. Similarly, we do have a surplus, and we do have one-time cash reserves in the form of free cash, which we turn back and we will use for one-time expenditures and oftentimes for capital. While the trend line does appear down, it's still treated as a favorable condition in the sense that we are generating the one-time free cash year over year, and that looks favorably upon the town. Next slide, Mr. Chairman. Pension liabilities. This is an assessment year. Every 2 years, there is an assessment. These costs continue to increase. The town is making regular contributions, as you can see, but essentially the goal line keeps getting moved. We're working diligently towards our contributions, but as you see at the bottom, the funded ratio, we're not really moving that needle because the unfunded liability keeps growing as they redo their actuarial tables year over year. And although we are making our regular contributions, it is a concern according to the ICMA that we have this growing pension liability. But the town does continue to make its contributions, and it's something we'll continue to do. And to that end, it does look favorable for the community. Next slide, please. Similarly, the OPEB, we're in a similar situation where the town continues to make contributions in excess of what other communities are doing, and we are actually making some headway on our funded ratio there. That's grown from 6.75 in 2014 to 14.81% in 2019. Although the liabilities continue to grow, we are making progress, and that is something that looks favorably upon us. Next slide. I put this in because one of the financial indicators is maintenance effort, and it looks at your assets. We have a considerable number of assets that ages. When you look at the overall average age of one of the town buildings, ranging from 4 years, which is the center fire station, back to the North Town Hall, the average age of a town building is 61 years. An average fire station is 42 years of age, and an average school building is 52 years of age. And our overall capital assets net of depreciation has gone down a little bit. So this according to the ICMA, is an area that the town could improve, and that could be reflective of additional maintenance, or what we'll likely see in the near future is enhancements to some of those buildings, including the fire stations that we coming forward, especially the North Fire Station. And should the town look to build a new school, that will change all of these numbers. Next slide, Mr. Chairman. Population trends. The ICMA looks favorably on an overall population increase. What it does have concerns with is when you have changes in any one particular demographic. As you can see in the bottom left from the U.S. Census Bureau, it's a breakdown by generation. And we have a almost even split among gender. But the upper right-hand corner is some of the data that comes from the UMass Boston Center for Research on Aging. And like many communities in Massachusetts, our population is aging. We'll hit about a 30% milestone at the end of this coming decade. And they consider that a warning to most communities because it can change a balance in the community with regard to voting blocks and people's interests. One thing that we may want to look at is ensuring that we have transitional housing for people that want to stay in the community, and ensure that we're keeping up all of our services and infrastructure to attract young families, and that may include investment in the schools. So they list it as a potential threat, but it's something that can be dealt with, and we value a lot of the people that we have here in town. My parents moved here 50 years ago, like many people's town in this town, and they continue to live here, and they want to, age in place. And so it's something that we need to look at so that we have the change in the homes so that younger folks can move in, and that's why it's considered something that we need to keep an eye on. Next slide, please. The workforce data prior to COVID-19 looked very well for the town. We have a very high income per capita rate. Our unemployment rate had been going down, and that showed that the town was in a very good position relative to our growing population, our increasing per capita rate, and our declining unemployment, which also ties in to our robust tax base and our collection rate. Next slide, Mr. Chairman. This slide, looking at what the numbers came out from the Beacon Hill Institute and the Massachusetts Taxpayer Foundation about a month ago, they were projecting some serious numbers with regard to revenue collections at the state. So what I did here, the top green line reflects the current growth rate of state aid and what we would be looking at potentially for the next 5 years. The yellow line in the middle, I took the same curve that we saw in 2008 and applied that to today's dollars. So in 2008, we had approximately 7% unemployment, and there was, I believe, a 13% cut in local aid, and we wound up receiving a significant cut of $2.3 million in state aid. Looking at the numbers that came out from the Beacon Hill Institute with regard to revenue collection, projected unemployment, and carrying those same numbers forward, if we were to apply those using the numbers that we had seen in 2008, it gives us that bottom line. So it's a worst case scenario that we could have double the amount of unemployment and double the amount of revenue collection loss at the state, which could turn into almost a 20% reduction in state aid if you follow the numbers from Beacon Hill Institute and Mass Taxpayer Foundation. And taking the worst case growth rate of state aid, which is that flat line that we currently experience, I'm projecting that we could lose upwards of $4 million, and then it would take some significant time for that to come back, which was the case in 2008. That isn't etched in stone, but that was just an estimate that I made based on the trends that we saw coming out of 2008 and the numbers and trends that are being projected by the various groups that have been reporting to the state Senate and the legislature on Beacon Hill. And I believe there's one more slide, Mr. Chairman. So if you want to look at all of these indicators and all the information on the previous slide and assess what you have using the ICMA financial trend monitoring system, the town's biggest strengths are its cash reserves, the tax revenue that it generates, the property values in town, and our bond rating. Our weaknesses at the moment is the levy capacity that I indicated, the fact that we haven't been getting state aid, and that may be very well cut in the near future. Elastic revenues is there only as a weakness to the extent that they're susceptible to the economy. And should there be a downturn that doesn't turn around as a result of the pandemic, as you know, we've all been in lockdown, and we do not see a rebound in motor vehicle excise, meals tax, hotel tax, that's a potential problem. And as indicated before, the increasing OPEB and pension liabilities is a weakness. The opportunities for the town are our debt structure. We can utilize that space that we have to spread out any new debt that we have or refund any debt. The opportunity for new tax growth, as well as capital improvement and maintenance and repairs to some of those buildings. And lastly, the threats, as I indicated, growing fixed costs, the potential for issues with an aging population if we don't address housing needs, and obviously the COVID-19 pandemic. If this is sustained or if we have a second bout of this in the fall, that could dramatically impact our finances and our abilities to cope with it. But overall, Mr. Chairman, based on how the town has performed to date, the fact that we have good financial cash reserves and prudent fiscal management, I concluded in my summary that we should be able to weather our way through fiscal 21, and then we will have to look and see what happens in fiscal 22. But I will leave that up to the tri-board meeting when John Souza and others comment on what we will do in the next fiscal year and the year after. And that concludes my presentation.
Thank you, Mike. Does anybody have any questions for Assistant Town Manager McCall?
On the second to last slide where you showed that the state aid wasn't going to change in 2021, do we know that in fiscal 21?
What do you mean, right here? I don't think we know yet what's going to happen. What I did was I applied the growth rate that we've had for the last 5 years and projected it forward so that, but I'm not aware of, they haven't released any budget information. We only had numbers that came in January that were projected in the governor's budget, and Paul could probably comment on that, but I would imagine, based on all the reports that were given to members of the state legislature and the fact that the state Senate President Karen Spilker came out and said this is not going to be pretty based on the projections of up to 20% loss of revenue at the state level, that's going to translate down to a cut in on the cities and towns. And so what I was trying to show here was when we had half the unemployment and half the collection in 2008, we got the line that's in the middle, that type of curve. And if you apply it to what we've been getting now, that's what could happen. But the worst case scenario is, in my opinion, looking at the numbers and trying to project what was told to the legislature by the Beacon Hill Institute and the Mass Taxpayer Foundation, could be a worst case scenario of closer to a $4 million cut in state aid. But that remains to be seen.
Okay. And on the last page, I don't know if we're going to get into this more at the tri-board meeting. So the SWOT that you have there, the strengths and weaknesses seem to have some consistency with the S&P report that we were given at our last meeting. But I guess what we'd want to do with this is say, okay, well, with the understanding we have of our strengths and our weaknesses, how do we apply that to maximize the probability of those opportunities and minimize the probability of the threats?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And turn that, into something actionable.
And I think you'll hear from various people on Thursday that may have some ideas about how we can do that.
Thank you, Mike.
I have nothing further, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you. And with that, we'll go to town manager reports. Let's get Paul unmuted.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I got a few items here, and I recognize we've been in meeting for 2.5 hours, so I'll try to be rather brief, and I know we have more ahead of us. First one is just the general topic of town operations under COVID-19. It's been over 2 months now since the shutdown went into effect. Everyone's certainly aware that the governor's reopening advisory board made its report today. Everyone is still sifting through that to figure out what it means and what the specifics are, and those will be coming in the days ahead. The good news is, in terms of operations, we are, we're doing well in terms of health-wise, in terms of public safety responders and police, fire, and so forth. We fared well in terms of their physical health and responding to the unique circumstances that were ahead of us, and obviously working with our partners through Trinity. And then obviously in terms of other operations of the town and the town offices, we're on top of things as best we can. Obviously our doors are locked, but we're doing well. What's been going on for the last 2 months is we have each weekday there's a meeting, online Zoom meeting with the police chief, fire chief, health director, emergency management director, and assistant town manager, and myself, discussing the issues of the day and where we're moving forward. Within the last 2 weeks, we've set up advisory groups to target the different areas. One group being, how do we reopen the town offices? The second would be the reopening of the library, and the third being the reopening of the senior center. Because obviously public safety, public works is in full operation. We brought everybody back today in the town offices. Although again, the doors were not opened. We all watched the governor's presentation and learned some of the lessons of it. It's become clear that the path is still ahead of us. And we're making physical modifications, adopting processes and plans in terms of employee safety, as well as the safety of those who come into the town offices building. The hope is that probably after Memorial Day, which means a week from tomorrow, we may be reopening the doors to the building. But in the meantime, we still have to put in place some of the recommendations that came out even today in terms of posting signage, the checkoffs, and so forth. The library, under the governor's plan, they can begin with curbside collection of materials by the public starting next Tuesday as well. So I was in communication today with the library director, Becky Herman. She will be talking to the library trustees on Wednesday evening, but we hope to be able to meet that goal of the states in terms of allowing for library services. And clearly the operations of the senior center in terms of as a social organization are ways out there. However, the senior center continues to meet core human service needs in terms of Meals on Wheels, transportation, and so forth. As those are essential needs for those in the community. So, in essence, that's where things are. We're making the investments, obviously, on the accounting side and finance side. Darlene is doing a great job in terms of overseeing and coordinating and applying for COVID relief that's available to the community from the Commonwealth and through the federal government. We're obviously watching legislation and actions at the state level. We expect to get some clarity in the next day or so regarding possibilities regarding town meeting. It appears at this point that board meetings such as this may not quickly resume to the public because there's still the grouping of 10 in terms of in one room, one gathering, and obviously the social distancing. So again, I want you to know that we're aware of these issues. We're working on them. We're trying to address issues in terms of recreational opportunities in the community, in terms of can we safely open Hart Pond and Varney Playground Beach to the public, given the 12-foot separation requirements, given the orders in terms of right now, if the state reopens the beach next Tuesday, Memorial Day, on next Monday, can they actually, if the order is, the conditions are, well, the people have to keep moving, well, you really don't have a lot of beach there at Hart Pond or Varney, which people can keep moving, given the limited shoreline. And also the fact we have to be mindful of the demand for those facilities, as well as the potential out-of-town demand if pools aren't, for example, open in the city of Lowell. So again, we're working on that. Same thing with the dog park. Can the dog park be safely reopened in terms of social distancing? So again, a lot of these things are health issues, and so we're working very closely with the public health director, Sue Rosa, in terms of they are the enforcing and governing body on most of these issues. So all in all, we're staying on top of it. We're in communication with the hospital on weekly calls in terms of what's the status of there in terms of the capacity of the hospital. We're also in communication with our neighboring communities in terms of their operations, and obviously through the Mass Municipal Association. So again, I'll continue to provide the data and information as I receive it. So if there's no questions there, I'll move on to the Southwell Sewer Main Street final cost summary. I included that in the packet. The cost of that just exceeded over $700,000. That was not obviously in the budget for the sewer enterprise operation. Fortunately, the town has a $1.37 million balance in the sewer enterprise operation. So we will need to go to town meeting prior to the end of this fiscal year, we hope, if that's available, to make that a transfer from the sewer enterprise fund free cash to that, to fund that project cost. So and we'll discuss this on Thursday evening, the mechanics of that in terms of calling a special town meeting to coincide with the spring annual town meeting, hopefully on June 22nd.
Paul, could you clarify what's Grenice and Railroad? And is W&S, is that Weston and Sampson?
Yes. Yeah. Weston and Sampson engineers did the consulting work in terms of engineering consulting work. Everything else was done by Grenice, meaning they were the contractor who was procured on the project. And they, for example, they did the hiring of the people who had to come in and put those irrigation wells in order to do the work. So we have detailed invoices of all that work, but basically those are the two major expenses. So Grenice sort of owned the work. And then the only other bill which was noted was the railroad. Because of the safety with the railroad adjacent to the work, the railroad had to have a person stationed there throughout the entire duration of the project because the rail line was in close proximity, and also equipment was being shipped onto the project site through the railroad. And obviously they would have to, the railroad had to be mindful of when the rail trains were coming through. So those are the three category of invoices for the project. But Grenice was the major one. And again, they would hire the company that came out of Connecticut who would do the dewatering, but Grenice was the contractor.
Thank you.
If there's no further questions, the next item I have is the electric vehicle charging stations. Again, I put photos in the packet and listed the locations for them. We received grants, and again, DPW and through Melissa Joyce, our energy coordinator, sustainability coordinator, she oversaw the successful completion. We now have charging stations at Chelmsford High School, Roberts Field, the Senior Center, and at the DPW off-road facility. So with those four plus the existing three at the town offices, Vinyl Square, and at the Adams Library, we have 7 charging locations across the community, which I think puts us right at the forefront in terms of communities our size. So again, I wanted to acknowledge the effort of just being recently completed by our sustainability manager to get those charging stations in place.
Oh, on the cost of using those, is that the same as the others in town?
Yes, I mean, and Michael's been sort of cleaning up the electricity part of that, but yes, they're all cost the same. Yes.
Okay.
Right. It's uniform, so you don't get a discount if you shop between the 7.
I don't know if maybe the new ones you were offering a beginner's discount on.
No. The next one is and this was a matter referenced early in the meeting, the inadvertent release of the executive session emails in response to a public records request. I have put in your packet the correspondence back on April 16th from our IT director, Ted Luder. Ted is with us on the call, and I'll ask him to come in. What I can explain to the board is when the request came in, the request was shared with Town Council Paul Haverty. The decision was made to obviously examine all the emails in response to the request and then examine those which could be examined and not released. And that was done by virtually going through every entire email. So obviously IT provided that list. I researched the list without seeing any of the attachments because all I see was the subject matter, the date, and so forth. That list was then forwarded back to the IT director, and then, as was noted earlier and as noted in his email, the incorrect file was posted. But I'd like to turn it over to Ted to really give you more in-depth discussion of how that process unfolded. So I see Ted there on the screen. So Mr. Chairman, I'd ask you to recognize Mr. Luder.
Hi. So when I wrote that email, I originally thought that I had uploaded the complete document, the complete folder of all the emails that were downloaded from our archiver. But I've since learned that it's really a matter of the process. So this is the two FOIA requests from Mr. Heaney were the first that we've ever even considered redacting any emails from. So we didn't really have a process. And so when Paul, the town manager, and the town, I showed the request to the town manager and to the town clerk, we got the process going. We had to determine who was going to figure out what was privileged and what wasn't privileged. And as Paul, the town manager, said, he talked to the town council about that. And the town council had said, well, maybe someone can go through it, and if need be, I can do a second round of it. And at that point, I said, well, I can do that. I just need some guidance in what would be considered privilege. And the town manager sent a list of items that would be considered privilege, and I started going through, and I went through it's a spreadsheet of emails, and I removed what I thought was privileged, and I cut them from that spreadsheet and I put it into a new spreadsheet. And then I sent that spreadsheet to Paul. He looked at it and said, yes, those are all, I agree with you, those are privileged. And I think at that point he saw the spreadsheet and said, to himself, I think I can look through these too. Originally he was a little leery about looking at those emails because he felt like some of those could be things that he shouldn't see. So when he said, send me the rest of them, I took the original spreadsheet that I'd cut from and I sent that to Paul. He highlighted what was privileged, and then I sent a second request of Mr. Heaney's to the manager, and he highlighted that one as well. And I took those two emails, the highlighted emails, and I used that to remove the emails from the folder that held the entirety of the emails. And I forgot about the email that I had originally started with, the spreadsheet that I originally started with. Those were the ones that were released, not the entire batch that I originally thought when I wrote that apology to Paul. Honestly, it doesn't really matter because, all the work that went into redacting those emails, the fact that some got released, all that works for naught, really. So that's what happened. I feel terrible about it. We have a process now where one person does the determination of whether it's something's privileged or not. Accidents can still happen because it's real tedious work trying to take a spreadsheet and find the email. It's a slow process. I can't say this will never happen again, but what happened in this instance, the process in this instance will never happen again. We'll have one person determining what's privileged and what's not privileged. And, that's what happened in a nutshell.
If you have one person determine it, should there be, have you thought about whether there should be like a second set of eyes before it goes out to sanity check what's there and what's been redacted and what hasn't?
We can certainly do that, sure.
Especially if you get another one with the volume requested on this one.
I agree. This was a large volume. I mean, we actually have another one that has a large volume that just came in. I think that in doing that, it will require the people requesting these documents to have to pay, because you get 2 hours free. And, you
Well,
know,
I don't think
that's fine. You know,
I don't, if they're requesting something that's going to take more than 2 hours, I don't think we should feel obligated to squeeze it into 2 hours for free.
I do agree with you.
If that means you're putting additional risk on doing it right.
Sure.
And I think rushing these sorts of jobs is never a good idea. So, I mean, what is our going rate, just so that people know? If you
The going rate is the rate of the lowest paid employee who can do the work in question. And the problem here is you've got executive session privileged material.
Right.
You can't assign to a, you know, to a clerical employee. So that's the issue. So there isn't a uniform rate. It's the rate of the lowest person who can perform the work.
All right.
It's more complicated than just removing from a spreadsheet as well. So if someone's going to take a second look at the work that's done, they're going to have to go and look at the spreadsheet and look at each of those highlighted lines and verify that those emails are no longer in the folder. It's not an easy process. You know, it may sound easy, but it's not as simple as you may think it is. But I think that's certainly something that we should, consider doing. That's something that administration and the IT department need to figure out what is the process for double checking, I guess.
Any other questions? Nobody have any questions? All right, thank you, Ted, for giving us that feedback and information. Paul, you want to talk to us about Misty Meadows?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. The next two items are Chapter 61 notifications. What that is, for those watching outside the board as well, is it's land that's given a special tax status, i.e. reduced taxes, because it's the land's held under state law either for agricultural, forestry, or open space purposes. So here we received two notifications, within the last week on properties actually abut each other. And the first one being 24 Misty Meadows Road, Chelmsford, Mass. Many in the community, including I know the chair, saw this subdivision that was proposed and approved by the planning board for this property. Going back now a little bit of ways, come to fruition. Well, at this point, they now have a signed purchase and sale agreement to remove the property. The premises consists of 41.16 acres, which is situated on a single-family dwelling. They have an agreement for sale. The purchase price on that sale is attached in the purchase and sale agreement. It's all spelled out for it. I think it's $890,000. I'm sorry, $950,000 is the purchase price, and so forth. So how this works is the town, under the state law, two things happen. Is the town has a right of first refusal. So in exchange for receiving that tax status, those who put their property under this tax status basically provide the right to the town to offer right of first refusal to this property. So in this case, the town has 120 days under the state statute to either exercise the right of first refusal or to assign its right of first refusal, such as to a land trust or other similar organization. And so in this case, that is triggered by the receipt of this. Notice went to the Conservation Commission, the Planning Board, the assessors, all in accordance with state statute. So again, we have 120 days or roughly just over 110 or so at this point to respond. The interesting thing here is that it does not appear that there would be interest by the town to respond to this, because in the subdivision agreement and in the purchase and sale agreement, a portion of the property is going to be deeded to the town for permanent protection of open space. So what's going to happen is there'll be 6 single-family house lots developed, and then the remaining parcel of 26 acres will be gifted to the Town of Chelmsford Conservation Commission to be kept as perpetual open space with an easement over Misty Meadow Road, which will be kept as a private road without town maintenance. So basically what the board would do at this time is we wait and hear back to get the expected confirmations from the, Conservation Commission and so forth that there's no real recommendation for the town to exercise its right to acquire this land or to assign it. But again, that option is out there. So that's what's taking place here. So the appropriate thing at this point would be to answer any questions that you may have, and then obviously table this, for a meeting or two until we hear back. The other boards have a chance to meet, and then see if they have any recommendations to the community in terms of how the board is, wishes to act on this matter. But generally what happens in a case like this is you don't run out the clock for the whole full 120 days. The town clearly has seen this one coming and recognizes the interest. And so I would expect in a matter of 30 days at most that we would send a legal notice to the property owner through their counsel saying that we're in receipt of the notice. And in this case, the town has, is declining its right of first refusal. Now, the other thing that goes with this is, as I mentioned earlier, there's a tax status on this. When they pull this land out and go to sell it for commercially, they do have to pay what's called a rollback, which again, in terms of additional taxes, to reflect the fact that they've received this diminished tax burden, and the calculation of that is specified by the statute. But on this parcel, the town of Chelmsford will receive a tax payment of $42,469 upon the completion of this process for that tax status. And then obviously in this case, we'd also receive the land acreage into conservation status. So I'll stop there, Mr. Chairman, in case there are any questions. Okay.
Anybody have any questions? The town manager?
Okay, then seeing none, there's a similar notice came in on behalf of Henry Parley. This is at 135 Pine Hill Road. What's going on here is that the parcel of land of 4 acres, and it's going to be leased for commercial use under a 25-year lease with a solar farm operator for solar energy generation facilities. And so obviously the balance of the land would still be held in agricultural use. But again, and not unlike you've seen this at a number of farms in the area. And so obviously that's what's taking place here. And then again, just to be concise, the tax rollback, if this is released for that solar energy purposes, would be $29,130. So again, we have 120 days, but I think we just bring them both back. They actually do abut each other in terms of the location of the parcels. But again, that would be the action at this point, would be answer any questions that you might have, but then put this on for certainly a meeting no later than the end of June, probably the 15th, to respond back to these notices.
Paul, on the second one where it says the town has right of first refusal, so do we have the right to lease it for 25 years?
I'll have to check with council on that. We may have the right to, because it's not a sale, it's a matter of lease. Right. So I will check back with council to see what the right is to the town on that. But clearly we do have to exercise a response to this. But I'll check with town council because certainly we have no interest in a 25-year lease for the property unless you wanted to hold it 25 years for open space purposes.
Any other questions? I don't see any.
Okay, thank you. That's all I have under my report this evening. I do have 3 appointments for the board.
Paul, can you hold on?
Sure.
George, did you have a question? Because I did get it.
Well, I did, Kenny, about 4 times, but I've been muted since Doug Housel was on, and every time I try to hit unmute, it says only the host can unmute me. So I'm all set. but it's not like I didn't want to get involved in the conversations, that's all. Thank you, though.
Okay. Sorry about that.
No problem.
So, Mr. Chairman, I have 3 appointments that I'm seeking confirmation for. One would be Historic District Commission, Janet Askenberg, appointing her to a full member for an unexpired term ending June 30th, 2020, which we know is next month, but I'll be bringing you all the annual appointments next month. She is an associate, an alternate member, so she would move up to the full member. And then I would seek to appoint Lisa Grasso as an alternate member for a 3-year unexpired term at 6/30/2021. And then to the Dog Park Advisory Committee, Arthur Casino for a 1-year term ending 6/30/20. And again, he'll be on the list next month for the renewal of annual appointments.
Have a motion?
Make a motion that we approve the town manager's appointments as presented.
A second. Okay, you go ahead.
You have a motion, a second. All in favor, Emily?
Aye.
George?
Aye.
Virginia?
Aye.
Pat?
Aye.
And I vote aye.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Manager Cohen. Pat, you have some meeting minutes?
Yeah, make a motion that we approve the regular meeting minutes for May 4th, 2020 as presented.
Second.
A motion second. All in favor, George?
Aye.
Emily?
Aye.
Virginia?
Aye.
Pat?
Aye.
And I vote aye. Selectmen and liaison reports. Emily?
There haven't been any meetings. They've all been canceled. The recycling committee attempted to get together and it's been postponed. So there's not a whole lot. I think people are mainly hunkering down and trying to figure out how to deal with reopening, and or just staying safe while others reopen.
Okay. Want to go to Virginia?
I have a few. First, from the Board of Assessors, they'd like the public to know that they are still conducting regular business, including warrants and requests for exemptions and abatements, and the public can access their virtual meetings via the Chelmsford telemedia. And if you have any questions about assessments or property valuations, please continue to call the town office or email the office. The school committee's next meeting is tomorrow night. They have several agenda items relative to school operations and other things that are relevant to the environment we're in, and that meeting will also be broadcast via Chelmsford telemedia. The finance committee would like the public to know that following the tri-board meeting that's planned, they are going to conduct their review process and include remote hearings, commentary, and voting, but just a heads up, that's likely going to be on an accelerated timeline. The age-friendly team would like the public to know that although the senior center is closed, the staff continues to provide critical services to the most needy seniors in town, and that includes daily preparation and delivery of 160 Meals on Wheels, transportation for medical, pharmacy, and grocery trips. For the social day program clients, they're providing at-home packets, reach-out calls, and video activity sessions. And the companion program staff is doing telehealth check-ins. Paul, I had a couple questions from committees about meeting remotely, and I guess the question is how should they work that if they want to meet? I know several committees have started meeting already. Is there a deconfliction that has to happen with Chelmsford telemedia, or do they just work through whoever their town employee rep is for that committee? Ken, can you unmute Paul?
Oh, hold on.
the simplest thing would be, the simplest thing would be to have them contact the town manager's office in terms of Christina Bruce, and because we also have scheduling issues like we normally do with schedule rooms, we want to make sure that there's no scheduling conflicts. So, rather than going directly to telemedia, have them contact, the town manager selectman's office, and then we'll facilitate that and go from there.
Okay, thank you. And then I know you had received some comments offline about the plans for the Varney Park courts and whether we're going to be able to pave Varney Road. And I've also gotten some questions about Academy Street. So I don't know how best to handle it, but I've gotten conflicting inputs from different people. One side is we have those orange detour signs at Academy Street, and when is that going to be, what are the plans for making that something more aesthetically pleasing and permanent? The other side of input that I've gotten from a couple folks is questions about why are we doing that, and I explain how that came up through the traffic committee. But the questions are, do we really have enough data right now to know that this is going on? And is it that it's going to help versus hurt, and is it just going to push the traffic issues further up Westford Street over to North Road, down Worthing Street? So I don't know if it's premature to look at that, given that nobody's on the roads right now, but I do want to bring that up, and maybe it's a topic for a future meeting. Or just something that you guys could, maybe Mike and the traffic committee could start looking at that offline.
Well, we did assess the academy, town common closure by the church prior to the COVID-19 closure of the economy, and it was working quite well. But right now, as you noted, is not the time for continued assessment.
Right, and I think it depends where you're sitting. That says it was working quite well for people that are sitting way up on Westford Street, because now there's gridlock waiting to get down Academy Street. It wasn't working well.
Well, again, when I rely on the reports from the police chief and other officials, and but again, we can't do anything with it now.
And I know it's not an agenda item. I just want to bring it up as maybe something to look at in the future as people get back out on the roads again. Is it makes sense, and do we undo it or do we make it more permanent than orange signs? So.
And then the issue with Varney and the paving is, as a result of the COVID emergency economic situation, the state has not released its Chapter 90 road monies to municipalities this spring. So right now, we're still awaiting action by the legislature to release road paving monies. And in our case, it's over $1.2 million. So the limited work that's going out there right now is from previous years, the previous year, Chapter 90 money. That's why we can't give you an answer on Varney or other, because the money.
Or any other plans for the summer. Thank you.
Okay, and let's see, we're going to put Emily up here next. She just said she's got some to add.
I just wanted to relay a whole pile of concerns from parents of young children in the community who are looking at the reopening schedule and wondering how on earth we're supposed to work from home while managing stressed out small children who have a wide variety of understandings of what's going on, and who sometimes are not coping well with things because adults aren't coping well with things, so obviously little ones aren't either. And there is a real concern that with reopening, with the lack of childcare, which is always a concern in American society, that parents aren't going to be able to fully go back to work. And I am frustrated by the utter lack of leadership, again, from our state. I know Tammy Govea had a press conference today on it. haven't seen a lot from the other three folks who represent Chelmsford, but I'm wondering if there's any way that as the select board and the town management, if we can push this issue harder as one of the larger communities, that parents need some help. You can't go back to work with, you know, homeschooling to do, and you can't go back to work with toddlers that need care, and it's a really difficult situation, and it is causing a massive amount of anxiety and mental health issues for parents as well as children right now.
Okay. So George, you have anything?
I'm all set. Thank you.
And Pat?
The only thing I just have a question. I want to confirm that our drive board meeting is going to be held this way. Is that correct? We're not allowed to have that in person? Is that correct?
Hold on, let's get Paul unmuted.
As of this time, they've not lifted the restrictions in terms of the gathering of 10 or more people. So when the agenda is posted tomorrow, it will be a virtual meeting. If somehow that can change before Thursday, we would prefer to be 6 feet socially distanced apart. But at this point, it will have to be a virtual meeting.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. And that, Pat, do you have anything else? Or is that it?
No, that's it.
Okay. I just had a couple quick questions. One for Paul. Paul, when are we going to start talking about town meeting warrants, things like that?
Thursday.
Again, that's Thursday evening. I sent that draft agenda out over a week ago in terms of what I saw would be on that schedule. So it will be Thursday. Again, the town meeting has been recessed until June 22nd on Thursday. And tomorrow, not the packet, but you will see what I think is the schedule in terms of how we get from Thursday to June 22nd, including selectmen meetings on June 1st and June 15th. And obviously with the expectation that the selectmen would make its recommendations, later than June 15th on the warrant articles.
So you sent that on Thursday?
No,
No,
we're on Thursday. Over a week ago, I sent an email, and on that included an agenda item. So that will go out tomorrow afternoon. I'm going to wait. It'll probably be mid-afternoon because I'm going to wait for the call with the lieutenant governor to see if we get any clarity regarding meetings and so forth. But barring the unforeseen, by mid-afternoon tomorrow, probably around 3 o'clock or so, you will have the agenda in the packet for Thursday evening, because we really need to have a robust discussion on Thursday. And the only way they can accomplish that is to have the materials to you 2 days in advance.
Okay, and on that, in that meeting, will we actually be going through the warrant articles at that point, or?
No, that would occur after that. Thursday night is sort of a direction in terms of where do we hold the town meeting, and then a plan on the revenue target and how to get to town meeting, and then what happens from there is the FinCom, as Virginia noted earlier, is going to have to meet. They have to hear presentations from the school committee in Neshoba Tech, because they didn't get to hear them before everything shut down. And then we'll have to come in with a revised budget, which is obviously a reduced budget, that reflects the revenue estimates that will be presented and discussed on Thursday. Again, that will go out tomorrow. And then, as you said, it goes from there.
Okay. I had several questions on the town meeting warrants, but I'll wait until we get to that point where they're listed.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Anybody else? And with that,
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
the motion is second. All in favor, Emily?
Aye.
Virginia,
Aye.
George,
Aye.
Pat,
Aye.
and I will also say aye. Thank you, everybody, and thank you to everybody who's out there being on the front lines of this and taking care of us, everybody at Town Hall that's doing all great work, the fire, the chief, the police, everybody in the building department. Thank you, everybody.